as well as other members of our staff who may be presenting reports here this evening. This meeting is being recorded, so when members of the public speak during the public comments and Q&A session of the meeting, your presence and voice will be added to the permanent record, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, as well as on our YouTube channel, which is streaming live and direct now to everybody in the world. The council meeting is an official forum for conducting the official business of local government. We all love our home. We are all passionate about our community. I'd ask that everyone maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the public comments and question and answer portion of the meeting, and direct any comments or questions for council to myself. The agenda and full council package for this evening's meeting, if you haven't seen it already, is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And with that said, I will look to the corporate officer for any additions of late items before adopting our agenda.
Yes, there is a on-table package that was circulated earlier, and that includes item 5.1, a revised petition against camping at Cape Roger Curtis. That was just revised today and resubmitted. 8.1, audited financial statements for 2022. 8.3A, 3 letters from the public regarding the development variance application for 1104 and 1108 Foxglove Lane. 12.2A, 37 letters from the public received between Friday at 1 p.m. and today at 4 p.m. And those are regarding the proposed regional park and camping at Cape Roger Curtis.
That said, I'll look for a motion for an adoption of the agenda and late items, please. So moved by Councillor Jurgensen, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion on adoption of the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it carries unanimously. Moving on to item 2, public comments. How many public comments do we have this evening?
We have 15 this evening.
15, all right. House here tonight. Okay. So public comments will be shorter. Upwards of 1 to 3 minutes. We're going to set a time limit tonight of a minute 15 for each public comment. The corporate officer will set a timer for 1 minute. So when you hear the beep, you've got 15 seconds, and you can really make your point home to council or refer us to other information for anything, or if there's an ask for us, that would be the time to do it. So when I call your name, or when the corporate officer calls your name, please come up to the front here, grab a seat in front of council, and the floor will be yours. First up is
Julie Vick.
Julie Vick, in person or online?
Oh, I thought she was here in person. Sorry, let me just check this in here. Julie, are you online with us today?
She's here? Okay.
Julie Vick? Yep.
Yep.
You're up. Ding.
Timer doesn't start till you get to the chair.
I thought it started at 6:30.
Sorry. To find my glasses.
Didn't it start at 6:30?
It could be. Public comment.
I think I borrowed these ones before.
You only have a minute 15, Julie.
Okay, I'm good. Hey,
Whenever you're ready, Ms. Vick.
yeah. If you refer to the Tunstall Bay Cape Roger Curtis resident delegation materials, you'll find this petition, which Andrew, I'm just going to give you a copy of. So you can, that's 1,402 unique pleas to council to reject any application for overnight camping at Cape Roger Curtis. Each name has its own reason. To the best of my knowledge and the people helping me, the names on the list are eligible to vote in Bowen municipal elections. We put many hours into making sure that they're valid names. Sorry, I'm out of breath from getting here. The total number of eligible voters last year was 3,408, and the total number of signatures being 1,300 is more than 38% of the total number of eligible voters. including non-resident voters. The voter turnout this last year was 19,042. 1,300 is 67% of that number, which is a very significant, substantial number. And just to compare for reference, in the last election, only Judy Getty had topped 1,300 in votes. It's our hope that mayor and council will listen to all of these voices. We're passionate and we're not going away.
Thank you, Ms. Vick, for being here.
Susan McIntyre?
McIntyre, are you here?
Good evening. I'd like to address the Cape Broderick Curtis Park no camping petition. Some are using this petition as evidence that more than half the island is against camping. Based on the flaws with the petition, we cannot rely on its results. Here is why. The process used to collect petition signatures is flawed. The first version of the petition should have said no less than 100 campsites, but instead said up to 100. The petition authors corrected the language, yet kept the previous signatures. When you modify the wording in a petition, you cannot keep the original names. Quoted concerns from islanders submitted to me include, quote, "Holy crap, X and my names are in the petition list in the paper. We have no idea why or how. We remember one time putting our names on a need more information type of survey, and that's it. What baloney. Absolutely, we do not consent to our names being published." I have other quotes, but no time to read them. The petition also suffers from what's called scope error. This means that it does not cover all the important aspects of the topic, reducing the validity of the results. The petition is binary, yes or no to camping, and fails to capture critical park camping nuances. It also suffers from conformity bias. I'll read you a quote. "I got home yesterday to find the petition had been published and my name is on it. Looking at this list, I know a large percentage of my friends are also on it and would be shocked and possibly angry that I now feel differently. Many people feel pressured to sign the petition or not to disagree. For these reasons, please do not use the petition as absolute evidence against camping." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre.
Charles McNeil?
Always exciting to find out whether we have 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes.
It's been a full house here these last
It's a
couple.
lottery here. So, thank you, Mayor and councillors, for providing the leadership that's keeping us on path towards preserving our beloved Cape Broderick Curtis for generations to come. I have many things to say, but I'm going to limit myself to one main point. To create a park that will work for our community, the region, and nature, we'll need to work closely with Metro Van. And I've heard lots of concerns about their intentions and capacities. Working with an organization that also gets criticized sometimes, the United Nations, I wanted to look inside what's the facts about the technical concerns. I've reviewed the actual goals, strategies, and methodologies of Metro Van's substantive technical work on conservation. To that end, I reviewed Metro Van's ecological health framework, the sensitive ecosystems inventory, the regional parks plan, the sustainable transportation research, and the Climate 2050 Nature and Ecosystems Roadmap. The bottom line is I'm very impressed with the professionalism and the state-of-the-art practices I see reflected there, certainly at and above what we see at the global level. I could fill tonight's session with details, but in case I run out of time, and it sounds like I might, let me share my conclusion. And that is that Metro Van would be an excellent partner for the scientific and technical work of protecting nature and managing a viable park. And I think it's also worth noting that contrary to what I'm hearing, Metro Van has a very comprehensive fire management system that includes an extensive network of highly trained staff resources 24/7 that'll add to our capacity. So let's continue to work together with trust and good faith here on Bowen and with Metro Van to create the best possible park. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil.
John Dowler, and he is on Zoom.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Dowler.
I'd like to present the first minute of a video, if I can share my screen.
Okay.
Good. Not easy. With limited time. So maybe just cut me off when we run out of time here.
There's no sound coming through.
Okay, that would be a glitch. Okay, we'll just enjoy it without the sound, I guess, because we'll have to work on this in the future. It's just music. These are some of the things that we're gaining with the park, and I wanted to congratulate council on this really great achievement that people have been working for years. There's a lot of space for people to gather, as well as places that can be conserved, maybe with fencing and stricter measures. You see animals out there, they're rare species. It's a beautiful coastline, stunning cliffs. This is an area of rare lichens and mosses that would likely be protected.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dowler. That's a great video. I hope to see it. Feel free to send that to Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Michelle Pence, or L Pence.
Is it okay if I stand up?
Absolutely, Ms.
Okay, thank you. Tunstall Bay is in a difficult position. The community could be the entry point to a regional park with new traffic for both off-island visitors and Bowen residents going through their quiet residential area, or it will continue to be the access to a housing development, bringing decades of construction. So the recent mail out from some Tunstall Bay residents to all homes on Bowen could have been a welcome addition to the dialogue. However, it isn't. Due to some inaccurate, exaggerated, and misleading information, the leaflet doesn't help us with the needed solutions. First, the leaflet grossly overestimates the number of off-island visitors by inaccurately reporting Metro Vancouver's submission on anticipated visits. By 2029, Metro estimates 83,400 annual daytime and overnight visitors, but that includes Bowen residents, estimated to be 60% of the total. So the actual number of off-island visitors would be 33,360. There's a lot more, but I had to cut this in third. The second problem with the document, its known impacts completely ignores the park's benefits or the significant impacts of maintaining the status quo. There is no question that the future of Tunstall Bay deserves special consideration, but that creative problem solving starts with reliable, unbiased information. Unfortunately, that's not what we have with the leaflet that was mailed to every home on Bowen. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Ms. Pence.
John Nicholson.
Mr. Nicholson? Online?
Oh, yeah, he's under
Cynthia.
Cynthia.
You're on mute, Don.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I sent a very brief letter to you, and I won't expand on that, but I feel like following the eloquence of the speakers before me, I'll be sending a subsequent follow-up letter. But the issues and details that have been identified to date, I think, present a very broad spectrum of tasks to be dealt with in the rezoning. And the rezoning process itself is really crafted to work out the problems. Not all the problems may be worked out, but I would encourage council to look at least 50 years out, if not 100, when tackling the issues presented by all the parties that have brought forward great and valid points. And they're all valid in my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholson.
Robert Witt.
The time to the next speaker if I was under a minute.
I have your time, John. There, councillors, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. You have a letter that we sent in, which I won't go over in detail. I do want to point out a couple of things, however, one of which disturbed me somewhat, and that is that on the application and the facing page, they've got two pictures which actually depict the original proposed structure for them, and they show a number of code dimensions and how they fit within them. And they note there that they're within code at 10.9 meters, which in fact does not apply to the building that's illustrated on that page. It does apply to what's on page 9. Page 9, which I included in my letter, or our letter, I'm sorry, does indicate that there is a proposed alternative, which is a different structure altogether, although it's still a quadruplex, which fundamentally we think is not correct kind of construction for that area. And something else that wasn't in there is something that came up just recently, that about 4.5 years ago, we went to an information session. We, the Foreign Court residents, went to an information session held by the Cove House people. And we were told that the development would be uniform and it would be it would be appropriate for the area in front of us. It would not be obtrusive. And so the duplexes that have been put in there already basically fall within that sort of constraint. This does not. It provides what is essentially a block of structure which obstructs our view of the mountains. And that's really one of the major issues that we have with it. And lastly, excuse me. Lastly, I was a little bit upset as well about some of the little errors that are in the application, which I think could have been caught if the application had been appropriately edited before it was presented. So overall, we are not in favor of this application going forward as presented. The development will, of course, occur. There will be something built there, but I think it should be appropriate and it should be in line with the other buildings that have been already constructed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your presentation.
Drew Burgess.
Mr. Burgess?
I've got a statement unanimously opposing any extension of Thompson Crescent to access Cape Roger Curtis. It's from all of us on Sunset Road, in case there's any discussion of extending that pathway as a roadway out to Cape Roger Curtis. And I wanted to present this in person because many of us feel that council's not listening to those of us who are opposed to camping. And then I note that on March 27th, there was a petition of 636 signatures from Bowen Islanders that was presented to council, and also that staff reported that the majority of letters received were opposed to camping. Yet on April 12th, council wrote a unanimous letter supporting camping. And I think a far more measured approach would have been for council to simply remain neutral until more information was received. I believe Metro Vancouver went ahead with the purchase based a lot on council's decision to unanimously support camping.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess.
Jake Hugh.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've been looking forward to this day for some time now. This has been a long, stressful journey to find a fair and equitable solution to the predicament we find ourselves in. And I hope we get one step closer to resolution today. I just want to thank Robin Fenton for her architectural concept design, Daniel Martin, and the significant time he put back and forth regarding various aspects of our variance application, and Dane Thompson. When I bought this property, I never foresaw myself doing property development work with a neighbor, but I'd never met before, but he has been a delight to work with, and yeah, look forward to moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cube.
Michael Kale.
Yeah,
Mr. Kale.
councillors, I think I know how it feels. I've come here for 3 deliberate purposes, which I will attempt to cover in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Firstly, why am I here at all? I'm here to support Julie Vick because when I got back a few days ago, I realize that in common with all petitioners, the very first thing that they will suffer are those who don't agree with the sentiments in the petition trying to pull it apart. So I went to see her with some other people who I trust wholly. I'm here to say in front of you, I am convinced that the document she produced represents the spirit and the feeling of close on 1,300 people here on Bowen Island. And you can try and pick it to pieces as much as you like. But that stands and it won't change. And if I may say so, the more you try to pick it to pieces, the more resolute I think 1,300 people are going to become. So your choice. Secondly, the second group I'd like to congratulate are the Tunstall Bay Neighborhood Group. And why? Again, they will suffer as Julie does because people will like to find some small sentence in there that they will like to pick to pieces. Nevertheless, the spirit of this is significant. They have raised issues the previous council raised. I don't know what happened. I didn't see any fervent conversation or the result of any fervent conversation with Metro Vancouver. However, this is a sincere document. And if I was the chair of Metro Vancouver, I would like to ask my people, how is it a neighborhood group does the simple, effective due diligence that my own people failed to do? And here it is on 2 pieces of paper. Those people are to be commended, not to be dragged through the mud by pettiness. The spirit of what they're saying is exemplary. Sadly, that brings me to the third point. The third group of people that I'd like to appreciate are those that have worked.
Excuse me, your time is up. Your time is up. You can't talk in time.
Time is managed by council. Thank you.
So very quickly, I'd like to.
Very briefly, Mr. Kale.
Thank you. Those people who have been working with the Freedom of Information Act and have brought to my attention items of obvious clarity, which I, as a serving councillor with the previous council, was totally oblivious to. And I believe the behavior of one of our councillors was exceptionally egregious. And I have in front of this council a request to meet with your legal counsel, which seemed to be a civilized, logical first step, because this whole sorry story will be told one way or another. And I would like to do it in conjunction with your legal counsel as a professional and dignified first step, if you so give me permission. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kale. Yeah. And just addressing the comments in the room, having sat in this seat now, I had no problem giving Mr. Kale a few additional seconds given his previous role here on council and his time served.
Matt Soder.
Soder or Souder?
Solder is good, but I don't really get fussed about any version of it's close enough. Mayor, Councillor, thank you for your time. I'll be brief. I feel like I'm a bit off topic. Given the rest of the sentiment tonight, I'm really hoping the Mayor and Council sees fit to approve our request for variance. I think it's a great, I think obviously it's a good solution that balances the needs of the community with the ability of the property to stay as a farming entity, and for us to take advantage of the fact that there's a large amount of waterfront on the property with no building on the waterfront. That's all I have to say. I want to get out of here quickly for you guys. Thank you.
Souder.
Lisa Hunter.
Ms. Hunter?
Hi. This is about the variance request we received from one of the owners of the land that is to be developed on Foxglove Lane. Our understanding of the situation is that due to them not being able to hook up to the municipal sewer, they need to redesign their original home designs to accommodate a septic tank and field, and as such require variance as part of the redesign. We understand that they are planning a pretty high density living arrangement with extensive parking included. All the neighbors here invested their money in what we understood, official community plan that defines a certain density and lifestyle. And our intention is to retain that lifestyle and value of our investment. The inadequate sewage planning is not our problem to solve, and we don't want that to be solved by living with more people, more cars, and less space. This is my first time coming to a meeting like this, and I'm quite unsure of what the next step would be. Does our voice actually, what is the impact of our voice? That would be my question. I don't know if it's possible to have that answered. Do we actually have it? Yeah, I understand everybody's listening, but is there actually, what's the next step?
In a variance application, maybe I'll just briefly let our CAO field that one, because I think it is an important question.
Thank you.
So typically during this period of a council meeting, people are able to express their opinions and thoughts and ideas on things. It's not typically a back and forth question. There is a question period at the end of every council meeting. That may be a long wait to get to the end there. But in terms of specific follow-up, you can follow up directly with me if you wish, and or our planner, Daniel Martin. And then happy to answer specific questions that you might have.
Thank you for letting me have the process.
And then you will see it on the agenda. So when it comes up on the agenda, there'll be a short presentation. The planner will describe the next steps, as well as the notice period, if it does go to notice, as well as a few other pieces.
Thank you.
It's difficult for folks that are new to coming to public comments. It is in our bylaw that council doesn't respond to public comments. So that's why, you might just get the thank you or the smile from me, or, we just want to let you know that we are attentive, but the format is really to give you as much of a blank slate as possible to come before council and have yourself heard. And that's why there isn't a lot of interaction. It's just really for us to receive.
Carol McNaughton.
Ms. McNaughton?
I didn't realize I was going to say anything, but it's about the same subject, about the fourplex. As I understand, Snug Cove House has given permission to develop small lots in order to make some money to build Snug Cove House. Now, they came up with a lovely architectural plan and it looked fine, but now we want to vary from that. And I think the density, I think the plan is for 4 bedrooms per unit, which makes 16 bedrooms in that one unit, which is going to make the density enormous. And right now, there is no visitor parking. So we all park on the streets if we have guests. So that's just part of the problem with this new development. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. McNaughton. Thank you very much, everyone, for the public comments. These have been a few meetings now, I think, where we've had a lot of them. They are appreciated. Just a couple of comments from this seat is I enjoy being in this room. I enjoy being in the room where you can feel some of the rigor of process in it, and it demands an expression of passionate concerns, but with constructiveness and some respect. It's been a really difficult week, I think, for this, or several weeks, I think now, for this council out in the community as we navigate some of the challenging issues that are facing us, both with this park, with new development, with the budget that was just passed, with all of the challenges that this island is facing. And the face-to-face contact, I feel, is just so much more important and worthwhile than some of the pieces that I've seen online, because it's been very challenging. It's been difficult in some, it's been dehumanizing in some respects. And it's difficult to get from people that you see in the street and from your neighbors as well. What I can say is that for tonight, in addition to the 37 letters that we had additionally for the on-table package, we read 500 pages before this meeting. Every councillor around this table sat and read 500 pages. For many of us, that's the second time reading those letters and second time reading those comments, because we also see them when they come into our email. So the piece here that I'd like to offer is that we are hearing you. We are, constituted of passionate people in this community who are your neighbors, who didn't hang up their heads or their hearts 6 months ago when we became inaugurated in office. And many of the things or many of us campaigned on this notion of integrity and process, of wanting to hold clear, open, transparent governance. And we've been doing that. We've released things from closed meetings. We've put things out there in the community for hard conversations, knowing that we were going to take the heat for decisions that we had no part in. And integrity and process demands that we take our time, that we are thoughtful, that we use the tools available to us at our disposal within these chambers when we come together, when we stream online, when we see you face to face, so that through that foundation of rigor, we can get at solutions instead of knee-jerk reactions, instead of name calling, instead of acrimony, instead of frustration. Because I can feel the frustration in this room. I can feel the passions in this room. You know, like everybody's here because they friggin' care. Right? And we do too. So conversations take time. Conversations take respect. They take a strong spine and a soft belly and an open heart to understand the perspectives of everybody here. And there's lots of different perspectives. You read the letters that we've gotten, like this agenda has like 100 letters in it. Very nuanced, all over the place. Everything from passionate articulations about the protection of nature to passionate articulations about the protection of neighborhood to outright disrespect, saying that council's taking bribes. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. All I can commit to you, because my role as a mayor isn't to be for or against anything, it's to be for the process. It's to be for the integrity of the process. And that's what I'm trying to hold. And there isn't a counselor around this table who has a malicious intent at the 15 grand a year they're making to be the butt end of this community right now. You know, we're here because we want to be of service. And that requires relationship, and it requires a common humanity, and it requires us seeing you as neighbors and human beings who want the best for the island, and it requires the reverse. So this is the conversation, and these are the types of conversations that we are up for having, that we want to deliver to you, and that I will do nothing but create space for. I will hold the rudder in this stormy sea until whatever wants to emerge emerges. And I don't have, you know, I'm a West Coast granola guy. I'm a little Buddhist. I don't have an attachment to outcome. It's like whatever comes up is going to come up, but we can't see it yet. And this is what we need to iterate on. So those are my comments to some of what we've been seeing in the community. And I would just ask for your care as we are trying to deliver it to you. That was a little deeper than I wanted to go, but.
Well said.
Well said. Well done. Thank you, Judy, and thank you, councillors, for your support as well. You know, it's been hard. Moving on to item 3, the consent agenda. Are there councillors who would like to pull items from the consent agenda? Councillor Wade.
I'd like to pull 6 letters from the consent agenda.
Okay.
The first one is from Marie Atherton.
Just give me the numbers.
They're not numbered, it's dots, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
So Marie Atherton, May 8th. I'm sorry.
Yep.
April 30th.
Last names is fine.
Okay, Hodge, May 1st. Whitehead, May 4th. Painter, May 8th. Don Schaefer, May 5th. Sherry Johnson, May 8th. Yeah, so that's it.
Okay. Other councillors wishing to pull items from the consent agenda? Councillor Fast and Councillor Getty.
I'd like to pull item 3.5.
Yep.
And then from info items, I'd like to pull 12.4 and 12.13.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Getty?
13.5, please.
13.5.
13.
All right. We'll do these in numerical order and I'll flip through as best I can. Councillors, reminding that we've got a packed agenda tonight, so we'll try and move through these consent items quickly. Councillor Wake, are you looking to batch all of the items and speak to them, or are you looking to speak to each letter individually?
No, the batch.
Okay. So I will turn the floor over to you.
So I have 6 letters there, none of, all relating to the Park of Cape Roger Curtis. None of these letters is taking a for or against stance. They are constructive assessments of where we are at and what our options might be. I'll mention that on Saturday, Councillor Getty held an open house at Collins Hall. We had about 30 people out there, and it was a very constructive discussion. And I think it spoke to the very thing you were speaking about in your comments. It gave us a chance for some constructive and respectful back and forth. And it went on for an hour and a half at least. And it was good. I feel like it's an example of what we need more of. We're going to have something similar, I hope, at Tunstall Bay at the neighborhood meeting on this coming Saturday. And I would like to see council have a constructive discussion about the options in front of us and the process in front of us. And recommending that we consider calling a committee of the whole meeting as soon as possible in front of the entire community by Zoom to have that discussion.
And did you just want to move to receive those letters now, or was it a?
Well, I'd like to make that resolution, but I don't want to take up too much time here. Or maybe we could just have comments from councillors about, you know, if they feel that would be a good idea. But I don't think you can wait till our next meeting to schedule.
I'll look to Councillor Morris, then Councillor Getty.
Can you slowly repeat the resolution? I'm not quite sure what you mean by a meeting by Zoom.
Well, I mean a meeting here, but the whole community can be here. I feel like we have not been successful in communicating.
So you want a committee of the whole meeting where we will talk and the community is, because it's a committee of the whole, will be able to participate?
Yes.
So more of a town hall than a committee of the whole in a way.
Well, I'm hoping it can start with that we can set the stage for it, and then I don't think the whole thing should be questions and answers, but I think that's an important part of it.
Councillor Getty.
Okay, so I had surgery in March, so I missed my April open house. I had one on this past Saturday, and during that 6 weeks or so that I had not been in circulation very much, I was a lot on Facebook. The first part of it on pain meds, so I was a little bit giddy about the whole thing, but and maybe a little bit too sarcastic in some ways. But I thought it was heating up, and I was quite nervous about Saturday's open house. And I think it's fair to say that we had a fairly good representation of pros and cons, or yes and no. And I thought it went extremely well, and I would support Councillor Wake's idea. I think the more that we can have a conversation, the better. You know, I keep hearing that we're not listening, and I think we need to put that to rest, so that, you know, there's a whole lot of information that we're trying to absorb, and there's a whole lot of stuff that people are trying to tell us, and we're listening intently, and it's just, you know, explaining. For instance, somebody made the comment today, unanimous support of camping in terms of that letter that we wrote to Metro. And that's not what that was for. Specifically was not for that. It was unanimous support for the purchase so that we could keep it on the table. And I thought that was a fine point that we were very clear on, and it hasn't been clearly talked about in the community, and I think that that's something that we need to do. The purchase is completing tomorrow, and there's no special meeting, so it looks like it's gonna go ahead, as far as I can tell. So once that's in place, and there's no extension or anything else coming up, then things start to shift. And, you know, then we've got a different situation, and we can start figuring out how to talk to Metro, how to get more information, how to, you know, work with all of the balls that are in the air and all the variables. But more often that we can meet, council meetings, business meetings are not the right place to be having the kinds of conversations that I think we need. And I would like very much for that to happen sooner rather than later, because I think the division is hurting us. And I think that it's really hard to pull back from that. So if we can do some information sharing and, you know, more people understanding all of the details that we're trying to sort our way through, and reassure people that we are listening.
Okay. Councillor Fast?
Thank you. I think this is all part of the process, and we have sort of committed to a process. I'm not against the committee of the whole or something like that, but without a decision in front of us, without staff advice in front of us, I mean, we've directed staff to do a bunch of work on this project for our rezoning process, and then Metro Vancouver is going to do their information collecting and reports and planning. There's a lot of process, and I don't want to muddy things. Like, we've set out the process, we've got other tasks that are on our agendas, and I would like to stay the course and keep doing what we laid out to do. If there are communications, or if there are conversations that might help, then let's talk about that. But for council to talk, I don't know that helps us get further ahead. And maybe we could ask staff to come forward with some suggestions or something like that. But for council just to have a public discussion about the little bit we know now, I think could be premature. We don't have the information yet. We can't, I would like to wait until we've got the information and involve our committees and go through the process with our recommendations from our professional staff. So I'd like to hold the course.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Jurgensen?
I think that having some community engagement now, with the understanding that we don't have all the information and we'll need to do more community engagement later, is probably a good starting point, because I do think we need to engage with the Bowen community about this issue. And we know we don't have all the information yet available, but I think engaging with that is with that understanding, a viable course to build that trust.
So maybe if I could suggest a course of action at this point, short of opening our calendars and getting down in the weeds on things. You know, I am able to call a committee of the whole meeting or an open house, perhaps leave it with the chair, and I'll discuss with staff and get some input as to, because my personal sense is that it's not just one open hall. I mean, there's going to be a number of things that have to happen, and it makes sense to have some kind of coordinated approach. I know that some of us will be in Tunstall Bay on Saturday to talk to that neighborhood. I'm sure we'll get other invitations as well. But this thing ain't going to move quick over the next little bit. So I think we have some time, and there's been like this sense of rush. So maybe, you know, let's just take a beat and figure out what's the best format for a town hall? What's the best location? How do we want to do it? Who do we want to invite? And we can go from there. At this point, I would suggest a motion to receive the letters and then just leave it with the chair and staff, and we can figure out a path forward.
And Mayor, if I may add too, in terms of process and timing, I just want to echo what you were saying about it's not going to move as fast as many people perhaps think. We're not clear on when we'll be ready to bring second reading forward to council, perhaps later in the summer. So we're not, if that second reading were to be approved, then we're not likely looking at third reading until some point in the fall. And then after third reading, if that were to be approved, then it could be a long period of time to fourth and final reading and adoption as we work out the real nitty-gritty details of the park management plan and things. So this entire process could push, perhaps by the end of the calendar year, or perhaps into 2024. It's unclear right now, but I want to allay the fear that it is moving really fast and that there is quite a bit of time to receive and review the information needed.
Okay, thank you. So I'll look for a motion to receive. So move by.
Just before I do that, I think maybe what we're needing is a community information meeting, so we'll just throw that in the hopper. I'll move to receive the correspondence.
So moved, second by Councillor Jurgensen. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Item 3.5, which is the collaborative project agreement on Cassidy Memorial Bench.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question. I looked through the materials and I didn't see where the plaque would go on the bench. I'm just, I know we've had a few discussions over the years in Parks, Trails and Greenways about plaques, and the way that Metro Vancouver does it is to put the plaque right in the middle of the back, facing out, so you kind of sit against the plaque. And yet, one of the earlier benches that used to be, I'm not sure if it's still there, out on the knob where the community center is being built now, had a different location. It was a little more discreet, and it didn't have the Memorial Garden feel to it, which I think can affect the park visitor experience a little bit. So I just wanted to ask staff the question about where will the plaque go?
Sure, I'll refer that to our manager of Parks and Environment.
Through the chair, I believe it will just go on the back, right on the, if you saw the picture of the bench, it's got no aluminum frame, so along the frame there. If you have a preference for different things, we can look at it, but it's just a standard size plaque. Smaller size, nothing fancy. We don't use that supplier anymore because it's UK wood, and these benches are much more maintenance free. So that's why we use this supplier now. So we can get different spots for it if we like.
All right, I just wanted to make sure, because it wasn't showing, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a large thing. Okay, thank you. Then I move I move that council, I'm going to trust staff, and I move that council authorize entering into a collaborative project services agreement with the Cassidy family that permits installation of a memorial bench at Seymour Bay Park.
Seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimous. Item 12.13.
12.4 and 12.13 are together. Okay.
Wait, 12.4 and 12.13?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. 12.4 is a letter from the Chair of the Islands Trust regarding feedback on the province's watershed security and fund intentions paper. So this is about protecting water supply and sustainability. And Bowen Island Municipality sent under the mayor's signature 12.13, also feedback on the watershed security strategy and fund intentions paper. I would like to move that these two letters be referred to the Environment and Climate Action Committee and to all the water committees for their information. I move that.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, carries unanimously. The last one was, is that right, that's right, 13.5?
No,
3.15.
That's these are the minutes from the community steering committee meeting. And I'd ask that those acceptance of those minutes be deferred until the next meeting. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at the tape, and I've got some questions in terms of whether it's that have been made.
Okay, so a motion to defer the receipt of minutes of the Community Center Select Steering Committee meeting held April 12, 2023 until the next regular meeting of council. The seconder for that, so seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. Nay. Opposed by Councillor Morse.
I'm opposing because they're marked draft and they're for information. They haven't been approved by the committee.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
I thought those were just draft minutes.
Well, the motion has been carried, so we're going to move on to item 4, which is done. Now on to delegations. So 5.1, Liz Watson and representatives of the White Sails, Tunstall and Cape Roger Curtis neighborhoods.
Hello.
There's 3 of you.
Pull up some chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one.
Bell.
Yeah, so if you could each state your names for the record, and then you have 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Including questions.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Municipal Staff. My name is Liz Watson. We have Erica Olson here, Susan Alexander, and Barry Merton. We're from the Tunstall Bay Neighborhood Group, and we're thanking you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm going to start by telling you a story of our street, of our neighborhood. Council Jurgensen, we are showing some images of our street and how it's used by people and cars simultaneously. Our street is like a pedestrian mall that is used by many, many vehicles. So that sort of sets the stage for what we're going to be looking at tonight. I wanted to thank Ms. Indinska for helping us, did I say that correctly, with our images tonight. So we do have a slideshow for you to watch as we go through. My husband and I have lived on White Sails Drive for 30 years. We raised our 2 kids here, and we've seen many changes over these 30 years. We first visited White Sails Drive on Halloween night, 1993. We were enchanted by the neighborhood's overall sense of revelry, connection, and celebration, and this continues today with dozens of children and families taking part in a neighborhood celebration on our street. Our kids caught their first bus to kindergarten. Is that you? Oh, I didn't know that. Our kids caught their first bus to kindergarten here. They rode go-karts with neighborhood friends. They learned to ride bikes on our quiet street, played freely in the streams and ditches, and set up lemonade stands. We would walk to the end of the road where the cul-de-sac at the entrance to the Cape is now, and we would slip into the dense forest that was the Roger Curtis lands. You can imagine that this is what Don Cromie, the original developer of Tunstall Bay in the 1970s, had in mind for this quiet island neighborhood. He built Tunstall Bay Road and White Sails Drive to service the 131 properties in development at that time, which was advertised as a recreational or retirement community. And I'm holding up the original pamphlet that they used to promote this recreational and retirement community with a clubhouse and a pool, which many of you have maybe seen. Here's a little bit of information on our roads. You can look at these pictures. You can see what we have. White Sails Drive used to be a dead-end road. It originally ended at D. Elliott's house, if you know where that is, close to where we are. And then the development was extended and it ended where the cul-de-sac is now. The forest to Cape Roger Curtis started there. All of our electrical and telephone services are under the road. The road is very narrow, measuring only 20 feet wide. It has a soft shoulder at each side with no sidewalks. The houses are typically positioned very close to the road with a setback, in our case, of only 27 feet.
as it was designed as a recreational or retirement community. A portion of Tunstall Bay Road is in a developmental permit area and to protect a salmon spawning stream, and a salmon tributary stream runs along a portion of White Sails Drive. Our 50-year-old road is not only our route home, it is our walking path and our place of connection. Neighbors meet here, children play here, pets and baby strollers frequent here. The last 20 years have brought monumental change to our quiet neighborhood. In 2004, Cape Roger Curtis was purchased by the Ho family. Development of the Cape began after an intense period of community consultation and feedback. And that's all I'll say about that. Even though the OCP designated Thompson Road as the primary access to the Cape Roger Curtis lands, Tunstall Bay Road and White Sails Drive became the primary access route for this development. The reasons for this are complex, and we don't have time to enter into deeper discussion about this tonight. Hopefully we can on the weekend. But suffice it to say, Tunstall Bay Road and White Sails Drive got the short end of the stick. When clearing for the development began, we watched in fear, well done, Sophie, as large, heavy equipment trucks and heavily laden logging trucks hurtled by, thundering up our street at very unsafe speeds. This picture was taken by Andrea Klein Harrington from her house. And in 2007, she, as a White Sails resident, wrote to council about the urgency and extreme danger of the situation, having witnessed a near collision between a full school bus rounding the corner at the top of White Sails and a fully loaded logging truck. She and others appealed for an immediate stop to the use of White Sails for heavy equipment trucks to council. Every time a large vehicle passes by on our street, the safety of the neighborhood is at risk. Then from 2008 to 2016, White Sails resident Ed Buyman appeared before a variety of Bowen Island municipal councils, repeatedly pointing out that council and the developers were not following the OCP, that Thompson Road was the intended access road to Cape Roger Curtis. Many other Tunstall Bay residents made this point as well, asking for an alternate access to the Cape consistent with what was in the OCP. From 2004 to present day, we've watched in disbelief as long rows of construction vehicles, concrete trucks, cranes, and supply trucks travel to and from the Cape throughout the day, crowding our streets and making it extremely unsafe to walk here. You can see from these images that when a truck comes down the road, there isn't room for it. It has to go down to the middle of the road. And if people are walking by, they are literally 5 feet from the truck. In addition to construction traffic, we watch as a growing number of private vehicles, e-bikes, and scooters speed out to the Cape each and every day, densifying on weekends and summer days and nights as people make their way to the beach, the lighthouse, the sunset, the walking trails, passing by our houses with little regard for our neighborhood and the children, pets, seniors, and families who live there. In December 2020, White Sails resident Susan Alexander, next to me here, presented council with a petition collected from residents requesting traffic calming measures. A speed reader was installed, but it never worked. In February 2023, White Sails resident Fraser Elliott presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting, representing a neighborhood group that was very concerned about the speed and quantity of vehicles using White Sails Drive. Because it's about speed, but it's also about the sheer number of vehicles that pass by on any given morning, afternoon, or evening. As far as we're aware, there has not been a traffic study done of our neighborhood, but on Saturday, April 29th, we conducted an informal count over a 3-hour period from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I believe you had that in your packages. We counted 115 vehicles going into the Cape in 3 hours. And assuming that every vehicle that goes in has to come out, that is 230 vehicles over 3 hours, which equates to one vehicle every 45 seconds passing our house. Please consider that this data was collected in April and that this will increase substantially as summer approaches. It always does. It is likely to at least double. We will be seeing at least 500 vehicle passings in a summer afternoon, based on the data of April 29th. That's the equivalent of a vehicle every 20 seconds. And we live there, we've lived it. Where else on Bowen do you find a neighborhood with over 100 houses situated close to the narrow winding road, no shoulder or safe space to walk, with 500 vehicles coming and going in an afternoon? And this is before any development in the park. After almost 20 years and repeated attempts to state our concerns, we respectfully but adamantly say enough is enough. Our street simply cannot continue to be the only conduit to the Cape. Moreover, it's in the best interests of the broader community of Bowen Island for an alternative access to CRC be built for safety reasons. So we've talked about access, and now we're going to talk about safety, and I'm going to turn it over to Barry Burton, who will speak about safety issues. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barry Merton. I'm a recently retired 32-year member of the Vancouver Fire Rescue Services, retired as a battalion chief. My experience includes a considerable amount of experience with wildlands forest fire deployments all over the province, from Delta all the way to Vanderhoof. In my professional opinion, there are three major areas of concern. The risk to our community as a whole, not just Tunstall Bay, we would be facing. The fire response capacity our community would be requiring with the campsite. The emergency response capacity of the community would be facing, including police, fire, and ambulance. The risk, Cape Roger Curtis has been identified as one of the highest wildland fire risks on Bowen Island, according to the preliminary environmental assessment report from Diamond Head Consulting, February 2020, see the package. The fire behavior potential of the forested area on this property ranges from moderate to high, and with high winds, extreme, and I've seen it. The preliminary environmental assessment also advises avoid dead-end roads and to promote more than one access point to the development. The primary risk concerns are access and egress, dry coastal unmanaged dense forest, steep slopes, water supplies, huge potential for large fast-spreading wind-driven fires. Fire response capacity: in the event of a fire, our first response capacity is limited on Bowen Island, making the risk to life, property, and the environment extremely high. Insurance underwriters consider Bowen Island an unprotected fire area because we do not have a full-time paid fire department. This is substantially different from all other Metro Vancouver urban camping parks, i.e. Pacific Spirit Park, UBC. Professional full-time fire departments are within adjacent areas or in the park. Extensive fire and wildland fire equipment access, large capacity water resources, mutual aid response agreements with surrounding municipalities. We have none because we have a ferry. Bowen Island Fire Rescue has a crew of 28 volunteer firefighters and as low as 16 in the summer with vacations and sick time and family matters. I would go into a burning building or a fire with any of them. They're heroic, community conscious people, every last one of them. They're being stretched to the limits with the demands of being a volunteer firefighter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Note one, over the last 24 months, Bowen Fire has responded to 650 emergency calls. 3 of these were fires in Cape Roger Curtis. Note, it must be understood that when Bowen Island Fire volunteers are responding to fire emergency calls or medical calls or motor vehicle accidents, they're not only risking their own safety, but they're also taking time away from their jobs, their families, and themselves. The Bowen Island Community Protection Plan was last updated in April 2007. The CRC development was not included in that plan. In the event of a large wildfire at CRC, Metro Vancouver delegates all firefighting responsibilities to the local fire department, in this case, Bowen Island volunteers. Bowen Island Wildland Response Level. Level 1, you assess, marshal, deploy, and engage with an incident command. Note, response time and fire attack capacity depends on fire location, access, terrain, and water. Level 2, if wildland fire cannot be contained at level 1 as a result of no mutual aid response equipment from surrounding areas or municipalities, BC Wildfire Service would be notified immediately, and it would initiate a 1 to 2 hour response time to assess the situation by a helicopter with a small initial attack crew either from Courtenay or Chilliwack. The water resources for addressing a wildfire at Cape Roger Curtis are not adequate. There are no fire hydrants in the CRC development. Primary emergency water supply is Tunstall Bay's water system with a limited supply. Secondary emergency water supply, Grafton Lake,
that's in the middle of the island. It requires a continuous train of pumpers and a tanker truck, and that's a turnaround time of 1 hour depending on where they are in the Cape. Example, in 2010, during the CRC clearing and build-out process, a construction crew ignited a slash fire and the fire got out of control. Bowen Island Fire Rescue was called out. There's no access to seawater, which could be used. Extracted water from Tunstall Bay's fire system, leaving us with virtually no water for our own firefighting needs or drinking same water. Tunstall Bay water reserves became so low that Tunstall Bay virtually had no water. Another concern regarding fire response capacity is evacuation. Evacuation is a primary safety concern for any resident of Bowen Island, especially a visitor to CRC. Primary evacuation concerns limited alternate means of vehicle egress from CRC, emergency egress dependent upon white sails and Tunstall Bay. No transportation for non-vehicle park visitors needing immediate transportation out of the park in case of an emergency. Limited water egress by a boat, and the terrain is steep, dense, unstable, and very precarious. I refer to the Emergency Program Evacuation Executive Committee minutes report of March 27, 2023. See the package. Concern was expressed about adding 500 to 700 people to the Tunstall Bay evacuation area in the case of an emergency. Potentially having 250 park visitors or more, not including day trippers needing immediate transportation off island and with no means to transportation itself could pose significant risk to public safety. How does Metro Vancouver plan on mitigating this risk with a ferry? With having no means of transportation for hundreds of visitors to an area that could be considered isolated in relation to town center evacuation hub. Lastly, emergency response capacity. Finally, with regards to emergency response capacity, we could also need to consider the limitation of other emergency services on Bowen, including police and ambulance. We have a part-time ambulance station that may or may not be staffed. I understand recently it's been boosted up a little bit. RCMP goes out to the Cape. I've been informed by the RCMP that if the campsite is built and there's an incident in the campsite, they will not respond. They'll have to wait for resources from North Vancouver to come by boat or helicopter. In conclusion, in my professional opinion, the Cape Roger Curtis is already a high-risk fire area for our neighborhood and for the community at large, making the risk to life, property, and the environment extremely high. I prefer to the Emergency Executive Committee's request that comprehensive answers to these questions posed and my stated concerns be sought prior to any further momentum related to the Cape Roger Curtis rezoning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Believe it or not, we do not permit applause from the gallery, given that there's a number of people in the community representing a number of different viewpoints. So we are committed to providing a safe space for all of our citizens here. You are welcome to attend and listen, but we would leave those sorts of shows of support and against just a little calmer, please. Thank you. Ms. Alexander.
Hi, I'm Susan Alexander, and I'm here to speak to you about access to Cape Roger Curtis. Like Liz, I've lived on Bowen for 30 years, and I've lived on White Sails Drive twice in the 90s when it was a dead-end street. And I just want you to imagine Deep Bay. It was like Deep Bay. You know, kids could run across the street. It was that safe, close-knit feeling. And then we moved back 2015, and it's become a thoroughfare. I mean, I was almost hit by a truck, like barreling up from the Cape, heading to the ferry. And you've heard from Liz's history, how again and again our neighborhood safety concerns have been disregarded by a series of elected councils in favor of the developer. You've heard from Barry about the danger of fire and in a drying climate and an emergency system that's already stretched. I know Metro Vancouver and others have claimed there wouldn't be an increase in traffic because campers will use shuttle buses or bike or paddle in, but we don't believe it. Just the stuff that Metro Vancouver recommends you bring camping can't fit in a pannier or a sea kayak hatch or a backpack. And seriously, I know how my kids camp and they bring a lot of stuff and vehicles and they walk in to that campsite with all their stuff. Anyway, we don't believe that day trippers and campers, even just a trickle of the Lower Mainland's 3 million residents, plus the annual 6 million tourists, aren't going to increase traffic on the only access road to the Cape, White Sails Drive. So on this screen is a map that we've come up with that identifies 5 possible routes to the Cape.
Jennifer, I've just got copies here if you would like to,
And we did it using data from the current owner. Webster Engineering has mapped out a Thompson Road extension that has minimal impact on Ferry Fen. But the map shows 4 other routes, possible extensions from Sunset Road, from Cromie Road, from Fairweather Road, from Radar Hill. There's probably lots of viable routes. But our point here today is just simply that White Sails Drive was never meant to be a primary access route to the Cape. We've shown you how the fabric and the character of our neighborhood has been deeply and negatively affected by what's already happened. We know you can't turn back the clock, but you can secure funding from the developer Metro Vancouver and identify a safer route in and out of the Cape that doesn't rumble past the small front yards of 100+ homes. And you can require the developer Metro Vancouver to pay for the new primary access road. So we're looking for assurance, assuming Metro completes its sale, that you will act in the best interests of our neighborhood's safety and guarantee that Upper Tunstall Boulevard and White Sails Drive and the DC Road connector will not be the primary access route to the Cape. And secondly, we ask that council will make no rezoning decisions until a new primary access road is created. Thanks, Eric.
Hi, my name's Erica Olson. I'm an ecologist and currently a PhD student studying how knowledge informs environmental management planning decision-making processes. I live on White Sails Drive with my wife and our 14-month-old daughter and our dog. I'm not the only young family that lives on White Sails Drive, having kids who play on the streets and pets. We're also running in small front yard neighborhoods. And as has been discussed by our Tunstall Bay neighborhood group, we're fundamentally concerned about the safety and well-being of our families. And in this concern, we also want to express how we are solutions focused. We're interested in working collaboratively to find the best path forward that can work for everybody. And in doing so, we want to make sure that the decisions are made using the best available information. We've tried to provide a lot of information here, and we are very grateful for the fact that there is going to be space held to have these conversations moving forward, including this Saturday. We're really looking forward to the mayor and as many council members as can attend to our neighborhood meeting on Saturday afternoon. And we really want these decisions to be made using the reality of the situation of what our neighborhood is facing, and also really recognizing not just what we know, but also what we don't know, and ensure that there are the types of assessments, the types of considerations, looking into these alternatives appropriately and comprehensively so that we can find a path forward together. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. So before you wander off, I'll just look to council if there's any questions or comments that councillors would to make? Seeing none, I'm going to look for two, or suggest two recommendations here. The first is a motion to receive the delegation, forward the timestamp of it, of the recording to Metro Vancouver Parks. So moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Second motion that I would like to propose is to move to direct staff to report on the feasibility of conducting a baseline traffic study in the Tunstall Bay neighborhood for the summer of 2023 at the next regular meeting of council.
I'll second it.
It needs to be moved and seconded first. So moved and seconded, and then Councillor Getty.
There was a social last weekend for some of the members of the Bowen Island Transportation Committee, and one of the speakers there talked about an app that a young fellow that is proposing the Green Line ferry had purchased that has apparently there's a signal that comes out of the cell phones when they're turned on, and he can track with little green dots every time the ferry empties and where all the traffic goes all around the island. So there's, I don't know that we have to go to the trouble of having a piece of wire across the road. I think that there's digital information out there that we can figure out how to access, and he apparently was willing to give it to us.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Saunders, then Councillor Morse.
Thank you. With this motion for the traffic feasibility study, who are you suggesting does that study?
So the motion on the floor right now is just to have staff report on the feasibility of doing such a study in for the summer 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully we can get some movement on it. Councillor Morse?
If my memory serves me correctly, and Daniel Manager Planning might be able to confirm, there's two studies underway right now or that Metro's engaging in. I would have expected that a vehicle count would have been a standard part of either of those studies.
The CAO?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The terms of reference for the additional traffic impact assessment and traffic demand management study, the initial terms of reference don't account for an actual traffic count. We're meeting with Metro staff to discuss that terms of reference and many other elements of this project, and that will be raised for them to include, strongly suggested to include an actual traffic assessment of the neighborhood this summer. I requested it earlier too, so it's not the first time.
Councillor Fast?
Yeah, I'll speak in favor of this, just so we can hear some more of this kind of information about what's already being talked about and what's underway and what's being asked. But also, I'm pretty sure that there were some reports. I remember that the speed thing was all ready to go and then it didn't work or whatever. But I think there was some, I'm remembering our former superintendent of public works reporting on vehicles speeding and some of them, or vehicles that were caught. Anyway, one of them was somebody driving without a license. And then certain numbers of them were tradespeople from various places and white vans. And so there might be some information in staff reports. Not sure if it was written or verbal, though. So I support the motion.
Any other discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
The motion repeated.
The motion move to direct staff to report on the feasibility of conducting a baseline traffic study in the Tunstall Bay neighborhood for the summer of 2023 at the next regular meeting of council.
Well, I think it should be just done by Metro, so.
Maybe that'll be what they say.
That'll be the report back.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
I'm more accurate than they are.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Members of the Pennsylvania neighborhood. Moving on to item 5.2, Tourism Bowen Island, delegation from Tourism Bowen Island.
Good evening.
Welcome, Ms. Perez. Great to see you.
Thank you for your time and opportunity tonight to present. I know it's a long night, so I'll try to be as quickly as possible. My name is Jody Lorenz.
Just for the sake of being able to hear you, I'm just going to wait for the room here to settle a little bit. Okay.
Okay. My name is Jody Lorenz. I'm with Tourism Bowen Island. I'm presenting tonight. Unfortunately, Liz Nankin is out of the country visiting family, so she's not able to attend. The last time that we were here was January 23rd, and Liz and I announced the development of a community-based responsible tourism master plan. I'm not here tonight to present anything because the consultants will make a presentation hopefully in June. But I do want to speak to some of the concerns that we did hear through our engagement sessions and offer a few possible quick wins that maybe help alleviate some of the pain points that people are feeling. Just a quick history, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Tourism Bowen Island is a registered nonprofit organization and was established in May 2015 with the support of the Municipal Economic Development Committee. Tourism was identified as a key economic driver, and in 2014, the committee supported the establishment of a community-based coordinating body, which turned into Tourism Bowen Island. In 2016, Tourism Bowen Island took over the operation of the Visitor Information Center from the Arts Council. So we added visitor services and destination management to the organization's mandate. TBI operates the Visitor Information Center. Oh, a little bit too fast. TBI operates the brick and mortar Visitor Information Center on behalf of the municipality from the May long weekend to the Labor Day, and this has been based on a fee-for-service agreement. The visitor center is open daily during this time period. The fee-for-service funds are used solely to operate the center, hire staff, and provide visitor services during this time period. The $20,000 fee-for-service has not changed since 2019, despite increases in wages and inflation. Visitor center staff are trained to be Bowen Island ambassadors and local knowledge experts and adhere to visitor services and destination management best practices and policies. As frontline workers, staff try to intercept as many visitors as possible so that we can provide need-to-know information, answer questions, facilitate responsible visits, mitigate problems, and enhance economic value. Obviously, staff do not capture everyone who disembarks, but we do try. Sorry, that was good. I was just going to say we're good, we're on here. We're very grateful also for the funding that has allowed us to create some new wayfinding signage, and there's a few examples up on the slide there. The signs will help visitors find the most popular destinations, visitor center, ferry, washroom, artisan square, etc. Slide. We are also we're just completing a new map. The last time that we did a map or any information was in 2019 before COVID. This map is being carefully designed specifically for visitors and includes information on and suggestions on how to visit responsibly, including leave no trace guidelines, doggy do's and don'ts, and a suggestion to leave no digital trace. We're also in the midst of doing a new website, updating it, and it will be launched hopefully later this month. And that will, over time also, that's our hub, and that will include new responsible tourism content as well. We are, next slide, we're about to launch a visitor survey through the spring and summer and fall to gather new data. The survey will be available digitally, and we'll also try to conduct some intercept surveys during the summer and fall. We're seeking to collect current data about visitation, stays in the community, services, resources, and economic values. Next slide. We've also been working with a Google expert to update Google Maps on Bowen Island.
As we all know, many people rely heavily on Google Maps, but there's quite a few inaccuracies on Bowen Island. Google Maps is a crowdsourced platform, so that means virtually anyone can add information, create listings, comment on listings. With the consultant's assistance, we're correcting some information and creating some new resources such as where to find public toilets on Bowen Island and a guided walking map up to Artisan Square. On a similar note, based on the work that I've been doing, I would like to suggest that Bowen Island Municipality claim municipal listings such as beaches, lakes, trails, and parks. Claiming municipal property will enable BIM to manage the information that shows on the standard Google listing and respond to questions and comments. So there's a couple of examples there showing, for instance, Kate's Bay, I think it says open till, is it midnight or 10 p.m. or something like, there's reviews on there. There's questions on Tunstall that were not answered, like are dogs allowed, things like that. So I think this is a good sort of proactive approach to take with managing municipal property. During our engagement and stakeholder sessions, next slide, the most problematic issue raised was, no surprise, the ferry. Well, most of the issues are complex and will take time to solve. We'd like to propose a couple of low-cost strategies to potentially ease some of the strain. Though ferry capacity can fluctuate considerably due to a number of factors, such as today when there's a stalled vehicle, staff shortage, ferry cancellations, we do have enough information to start informing residents and visitors about general capacity trends, to share information and suggest some off-peak travel times as alternates. Travis Beals, through using the BC Ferry stats, created these pivot tables, which are really helpful to visualize, peak travel times and look at ways that we can get people, one, inform them and look at ways to encourage people to travel off-peak if possible. So we'll do our part to try to get that information out to visitors, but perhaps there's a way for us to collaborate with the municipality and look at how we can streamline communication, because even today, with the overload, people are getting stuck in yellow hatching and things like that. So on that note, I'll come back to that in a moment, but on a related note, going to the next slide, in addition to the daily ferry travel, summer obviously is peak travel months, in particular July and August. And if you add into that during those months is also peak sort of special events, weddings, things like that. People are traveling, kids are out of school, the weather's nice, people just want to enjoy themselves. So we know that there are going to be some really intense days, such as July 22nd, we've got the Snug Cove Music Fest, plus we know of 4 weddings. So there's at least, we estimate 1,500 extra guests, not including trades, people setting up, caterers, all those kinds of things. And so you're going to add that to the typical summer Saturday visitors. I was also, during our engagement, talking to Carrie McIntosh at BC Ferries, and she welcomes an opportunity for their planning to also be informed of high traffic days. So if there's a way that we can try to coordinate that information and once again get that out to residents and visitors for better planning, need to know sort of, so that we hopefully alleviate some pain with people not knowing in advance. On the next slide, I've personally managed the visitor center for 7 years, so going into my 8th year. So I have a lot of firsthand experience with traffic flow in Snug Cove, ferry marshalling, talking to and assisting visitors. I also know that people don't always read signs and they don't always read pamphlets or things like that. I've struggled with trying to understand why people didn't know about yellow hatching, so I did some research and I even talked to the Ministry of Transportation. And apparently yellow just means caution. And so the yellow hatching is not necessarily a wide known fact that that means no stopping or parking. So in an effort to minimize confusion and help alleviate frustration between residents, visitors, and commercial vehicles also don't seem to know, a lot of them don't know this. I would like to suggest perhaps trying a low cost, painting in the yellow hatching, no stopping, no parking. There's a few examples up there. There's also common signage that is used. I don't recommend signage. I recommend putting it on the pavement because that guides people as they're actually driving along where to stop and where not to stop. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Tourism Bowen Island will be sharing, a responsible tourism strategy soon. But I also want to let you know that we're continually working on new tactics and in partnership with stakeholders to foster more sustainable tourism ecosystem here on Bowen and within the region. 2 weeks ago, I attended the Rural Island Economic Partnership along with other Bowen representatives. Many of the issues that Bowen faces are shared by the other rural islands. So there's opportunities to work collaboratively, which might result in more benefits. Tourism Bowen Island also contributed to the development of the Sea to Skies Don't Love It to Death campaign. You'll see more of this educational campaign in the coming months, and we'll be adapting some of the messaging specifically for Bowen Island. So these are just a few of the high level this is a high level presentation about some of the initiatives that we're working on. And I'm hoping that this will help us work together, dialogue a bit more about helping to mitigate some of the problems that are causing frustrations. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Any questions for Tourism Bowen Island? Councillor Wick.
Thank you. So a couple of questions on the Google Maps and getting municipal properties on that. Would your consultant be able to help the municipality with that? That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Because to be honest, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Google. But now that I was working on this, and we're still doing a bit more work. Once you start to delve a bit deeper in it, it's just like, whoa. So yes. I'm not a Google expert at all, but I'm helping with him. We're tackling some of this. It is crowdsourced, so there's never any guarantee that the changes that you make will stick. But that's why claiming the municipal property would be a really good, because then you kind of have ownership, and then you can display the information that you want, such as like in Manion Bay, there's no campfires ever. So that should be on the beaches. This would be my suggestion, right? Trying to get that information up there, help mitigate potential problems.
So kind of a follow-up to that is there any talk or possibility about a visitor orientation app that would actually show them on, but they can see where they are on Google Maps? That would also help with the location identification part, so we could get good data. But something that they could interact with to say, restaurants, and it'll come up on the map.
We're updating the Google Maps. So we have, I looked into this, considered, do we want to invest in an app? Do we want to stay at the website? All this sort of stuff. When I talk to people, if you already have a website and we are, like I said, updating the website, it will have some maps and stuff like that. It's kind of a duplication. But Google Maps is something that, we want to, ideally, I want to get people, when I see them on the side of the road and they've got their phone out, Google's telling them to walk down the road to Killarney Lake or Mount Gardner. So if we can get them off the road, that's safety and all that kind of stuff. So I think using what is already widely used by people as opposed to getting them to download a new app, I think that is a good way to go, and that's what I'm trying to do, or what we're trying to do. Kind of use where people are already going. Yeah.
Any other questions? Sina, I'll just thank you. I look forward to seeing you on a quarterly basis and having those updates. I appreciated the attention to data and the desire to really have a role in managing the people that we know are going to come already. And I just, wanted to thank you for that, Councillor Fast.
Oh, thanks. I have one question. I'm just wondering, on 2 days ago, I saw 2 electric cargo bikes going down the multi-use pathway towards the library. And so it was 2 adults and 3 children on these 2 bicycles. And I'm interested in how e-bikes are going to change how people get around and how our path will be used. And I'm wondering if you can keep an eye out this summer as to whether you see more of them, or do you keep that kind of stats, or do you keep those kind of questions?
Yeah, we definitely, we do, we keep, it's not perfect, obviously, but we do old-fashioned stats where one of the questions is people traveling by bike. So we do have some of that, and yes, you're absolutely right, more and more people are traveling by e-bikes. When we do get inquiries about people before they're, wanting to bike and stuff, we always caution them. The roads are hilly and,
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that you'll keep an eye open. And if there's anything to write about, you let us know. I think these were Bowen Island residents. I don't think they were visitors. So I'm just, or if you get questions about where can I park my e-bike? I've seen in Victoria and some places, there's starting to be e-bike, like valet parking and things.
Yeah.
Just if you get those kinds of inquiries, I'd be interested. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, when we have people come, we ask about their mode of transportation. Most people are traveling by foot, but there's bikes, there's coming by boat, there's coming by car. So then we modify also the suggestions that we make for them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, council, moving on to item 6, business arising from minutes. So these next 3 items are carryovers from our last agenda. Like some.
Yeah.
What's that? Yep.
I wonder if we could adopt the other consent agenda items. Have we done that? Yeah. All of them?
Yep.
Adopt the consent agenda? I think we went to, I don't think so. I think we went to I don't have check marks beside all the other ones. I know we pulled some. So maybe.
Received the letters, right?
You're right. We received the letters. So maybe just a motion to adopt the consent agenda. As amended by Councillor Jurgensen, second Councillor Getty. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously.
Hey, Patrick's around somewhere. I saw him.
He's right there.
Oh, there he is, hiding.
It's in plain sight.
So these next 3 items, they are left over from last week's agenda. They've been, the reports have been on them, available to us for 4 weeks now. I would ask that we move through them quickly to try and make up some time. So for item 6.1 and 6.2, Patrick will give us an update on, or the Director of Engineering will give us an update on 6.2, but for 6.1, there's no presentation. Patrick will just be here for questions. Or we can just move the recommendation. Councillor Getty.
Changes.
Pardon me?
Are there any changes?
To
the original?
The original?
No. There was, you're talking about the
Baylink.
License agreement.
Of course.
I'm still not totally clear. So they're going to land on Bowen, bring in new lines, but what happens to that is entirely up to Sunday. So it could sit there for years, totally of no use to anybody.
Possibly, or it could be existing service providers that use it to improve their options and delivery of service. There's really no downside for Bowen to have the additional service option. It's part of a larger project and the landing here.
That's not going to mess up the use of the beach in the summer and all that stuff?
No.
I mean, while they're doing the work.
There'll be a little bit of disruption while they're actually doing the work, but it's not a big project.
Councillor Jurgensen?
Just to clarify and make sure my understanding of the project is clear, they are seeking to land a cable on Bowen, possibly island hop somewhere else from there, but not necessarily provide service to Bowen. It's just the terminus. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. They're landing at many different places along the coast. Focuses on providing a high-speed internet to remote coastal communities. And this is one of the spots that they're landing. So it's for future service.
Councillor Wake and then Councillor Fast.
Councillor Fast and I attended the local mainland local government association conference in Harrison Hot Springs, and I spoke to Shaw Rogers, the Shaw Rogers representative, about same sort of questions like, what are you guys going to do with this? And certainly the opportunity is there, but they have good links to the island, and I believe TELUS does as well with fiber. So it's already here. The real question is, how does it get distributed out? And the normal way they would do it would be to put a tower right where that landing is. And they know that that's probably not going to fly. So the opportunity is there, but it sounds like it's not really going to enhance our service provider's service. But it could, if they wanted to.
Okay. Councillor Fast?
Yeah, thank you. I also spoke to Kristen Enemark, was formerly with Shaw, now with Rogers. So I, at the Lower Mainland conference. And I should say over the past couple of years with Islands Trust, I've been writing letters in support of the Connected Coast because I think the more high-speed links, the better. The redundancy will be good. Sometimes the technology has changed. For example, TELUS has got copper-based sort of system and whatever. Anyway, it doesn't get turned into high speed. In the future, this might be really important, especially for some parts of the island that don't have good service, or for emergency services, or for the big LNG tankers that are proposed to go up and down for ship navigation, so things don't hit. That's part of the new Oceans Protection Plan kind of funding that's also going into these things. I think it would be good for Bowen. I'd be happy to make the motion. And I don't see any downside. I was part of the high-speed internet working group with the previous council, and we did a ton of work on this. I can answer questions, but I just think there's minimal damage to Bowen Bay. There's already a cable there, and it hasn't been a problem. And there's also one from Cape Roger Curtis, actually, and as well as the ones that come in around the cove. And I'm in favor, and I'll be happy to move the motion. And I'll questions. Thank you.
I'll go to Councillor Saunders first.
Thank you. Just really briefly to respond to one of the comments that from Councillor Wake there about it doesn't really enhance any of the existing providers. Yeah, that's true, but it can enhance a future provider and give us a few more options potentially. And there's no such thing as too much fiber in the world today and moving forward. So I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to enter into a site access agreement with Strathcona Connected Coast Network Corp. for fiber optic cable and vault to be located at the road right of way at Bowen Bay Beach. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.2, Blue Water Park Water System, conservation measures and moratorium on building permits. Mr. Graham with a brief verbal upgrade.
Yeah, it's brief. So we did have problems last year and previous years in water. We've got a solution that's in progress. It won't be in place for this summer. So we need to be as cautious as we can be in terms of demand management of water resource. We implemented higher level of water use conservation guidelines in Blue Water. Not everyone's happy about that, but that's preemptively trying to reduce demand. We've also flagged the issue of any development that would add water demand to the system, not allowing building permits for those developments until the solutions in place and prove to be functioning as it should. So that's essentially towards the end of 2024. So that wouldn't apply to a building permit for something like a deck or that sort of thing. So that's more of a information item. That's what we're intending to do. Applicants for building permits would have the option to, similar to the way it worked for the sewer system, they would have the option to proceed with construction, understanding that they, with a covenant indicating that they wouldn't get occupancy permit until such time as the service is proved to be adequate. The other item that's flagged there in terms of demand management is our lack of enforcement related to water conservation. So we don't actually have the ability to enforce their water use guidelines that we apply to the different water systems. We don't have the ability to enforce them. Someone's doing something using water from a hydrant unauthorized. It's not something we can tell them to stop. We don't actually have enforcement mechanisms. So that's something we should have. It's a tool that's, I think, it's important and something that we intend to pursue. Whether it's a separate bylaw or amendment to some existing bylaw, I'm not entirely sure. It's probably a new bylaw.
Thank you. Questions for the Director of Engineering, Councillor Getty, then Councillor Morse.
So, Graham, the last comment that you just made was that we don't have regulations to stop somebody from using water from a hydrant. And if we did, we haven't been enforcing it, or both?
Well, we don't have an enforcement mechanism currently.
Okay.
Yeah, so we wouldn't be able to fine anybody for that. Tell them to stop.
Or charge them the water rate?
Charge them. No, so it's a gap that we're identifying as built.
Can we expedite it for the summer?
Councillor Morse?
So is Patrick wanting us to pass this recommendation to consider strengthening enforcement? Or do we want it to be, I'm not sure just how that fits with comment about they're going to proceed with doing it. So are we?
We're seeking direction from council to advance bylaw amendments to enable enforcement of water conservation guidelines, which effectively would become restrictions and with enforcement mechanisms.
So if somebody's using way too much water, you do have the ability to turn the tap on.
I mean, if there's a leak that's somebody's not there and there's a leak on their property that we've identified, yes, we would turn the water on.
So I guess the motion at this point, I haven't got my glasses on, is that council direct staff to consider. So that sounds like the considering's already happened. So if you're wanting a recommendation, I think it should read the council direct staff to proceed with development of the necessary bylaws and policies to strengthen enforcement of water usage infractions.
Sure, that's it.
And report back.
I heard the corporate officer madly typing, so I'll check with her to see if we got it.
Yes, so that was that council direct staff to proceed with development of necessary bylaws and policies to strengthen enforcement of water usage infractions, such as use of local service area fire hydrants for other purposes, and report back to council.
Councillor Jurgensen?
Second.
You'll actually move because you're the first. Counselor Morse moves. Counselor Jurgensen seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Counselor Getty?
Can we expedite it somehow in terms of workloads?
What would you like to drop from the already prioritized list?
Can I direct staff to prioritize?
I'll pause this here, noting that we do have a strategic review coming up in June. We can look at the sum total of priorities instead of trying to map them out here. Might be the best place, knowing that the wheels of bureaucracy grind slowly. So I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Grant. Item 6.3, Birch request for waiver of development variance permit application fee. It is not a presentation on this one, but Planner Martin is here to answer questions, if there are any, or we can look at a recommendation, noting the time. Councillor Jurgensen.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jurgensen. Seconded by Councillor Fast, who had her hand up first. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Planner Martin, for standing up and sitting down again. Moving on to item 7.1, bylaw number 604, our 2023 5-year financial plan, and bylaw number 605, our 2023 annual tax rates. Consideration of adoption. Ms. Watson is here for any questions that we might have. Councillor Jurgensen? Oh, Councillor Jurgensen moves the recommendation. I love it. Is there a seconder for the recommendation from Councillor Getty? Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. And with that,
Most exciting part of the evening.
having been adopted, I just want to thank our CFO here for a really compressed and long budget process, but also for her care and generosity with council and stewarding us through our first budget process. I think we've landed with a realistic budget that assesses the needs of our community, and it will be adjusted as we go on, but I know it's been a lot of work and there's been a lot of things thrown at you in these last months, and you're very, very appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
And item 8.1, audited financial statements 2022.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, the audited financial statements were included in the on-table agenda package. They were audited by BDO, the municipal auditors. I'm pleased to report that the auditor's opinion is a clean audit for 2022, and that the recommendation from the Finance Advisory Committee was that council approved the 2022 audited financial statements. The highlights for the year include a cash position of $9.3 million at the end of the year. It's currently invested in a high interest savings account. At the end of the year, we had accounts receivable of just over $3 million, community center grants receivable, about $1 million in taxes and utility fees, and other things like GST, things like that. About $3.7 million was sitting in accounts payable at year end. And we had deferred revenues of $2.1 million for a total debt of $12.5 million in long-term debenture borrowing. Our tangible capital assets are valued on the books at $85.6 million. We added $11.7 million of tangible capital assets this year. Most of that, of course, was related to construction of the community center and finalizing of the construction of the fire hall. We recorded a depreciation expense this year of $2.2 million. With regards to the statement of operations, we came in very close to budget. We had $16.4 million in revenues against a comparative budget estimate of $16.1 million. And our expenses were very close to budget as well. I think I'll just talk a little bit about the reserve funds at the end of the year. At the year-end balance in reserve funds was $4.5 million. Of that, $1.8 million are attributable to the water funds, and just want to take a moment to point out the sewer surplus. So the statements do indicate that there was a $464,000 surplus in the sewer fund at the end of the year. I would like to point out that this amount is 100% committed to completion of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. So really, for all intents and purposes, there really are zero surplus funds sitting in the sewer fund at year end. And that's why we increased the rates and added to the parcel tax this year in the budget. Our general accumulated operating surplus is our rainy day fund. It's our balance that we use to fund one-time extraordinary costs or to fund our working capital needs. That is sitting at 1.2 million at the end of the year. And we had about 900,000 in the COVID restart grant funds at the end of the year. So earlier today, the Finance Advisory Committee reviewed the financial statements in detail with the auditor. And the recommendation coming forward tonight, and which will be represented in the minutes from that meeting, is that the Finance Advisory Committee recommends that council approve the 2022 audited financial statements.
Thank you, Ms. Buxton. Councillor Wake. Councillor Wake moves the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Jurgensen. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nice work. Thank you.
Yeah, really nice work. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2, consideration of development variance permit 2023-0065, 1461 Mount Road. Looks like Planner Martin is here to take questions. Councillor Jurgensen?
Just point of clarification, that's the one applying to N as well?
Correct, yes. Any highlights you want to provide us of the notice period, Councillor Martin, or Councillor Martin? Sounds good, sounds good. You're next.
Just that after this application was introduced to the April 11th meeting, we sent out the notice. We received one letter with 6 signatures from residents on Mount Gardner Road who supported the variance application.
Any questions or comments from councillors before we seek a resolution? Resolutions from councillors? Okay, so the recommendation being moved by Councillor Wake is that council issue development variance permit DVP 2023-0065 for the variance of maximum lot coverage as well as the maximum floor area of a detached secondary suite for 1461 Mount Gardner Road, legally described as the legal description follows. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Councillor Getty.
Some of the points that were raised in the letter, first of all, if there's an interest in the farmhouse or any of the other buildings in them having heritage value, it would be good to point that out and refer that to the Heritage Commission. And they make that point, I think, at the end, if council comes across something that appears to have heritage value, that they be notified of it, because they clearly have an interest. The decommissioning of the kitchen in, I believe it's the farmhouse. It seems to me that one of the points that's raised is that it's a large property, 140 acres, and that even with the farm buildings, that there's space and room. I don't know, there's one comment in the report that it's very difficult to make amendments to allow for the existence of the buildings as housing. We've got a housing problem, and it seems a shame that we can't figure out a way of using these for housing and avoiding somehow the decommissioning of the kitchen in one of them, for instance. So I don't want to propose that we stall this and that we cause any difficulty. Everybody seems to be in favor in terms of both the plans and the idea of this variation, but there's attachments to it that cause me some problems in terms of both housing and the heritage aspects. any wiggle room?
Through the chair, so the Local Government Act for regulations for development variance permits, so that a development variance permit must not vary the use or density of land that's specified in the bylaw. So in essence, we cannot vary the number of dwellings permitted on a property. It would take essentially a rezoning or a subdivision to permit additional dwellings on that site, and the applicant wishes to proceed with the variance to proceed with the house construction, essentially faster than a rezoning would take place.
Councillor Morris, then Councillor Jurgensen.
I assume if the applicant wanted to at some point, they could apply for a rezoning, and I also assume the kitchen won't be decommissioned until the new house is built, so that they've still got a house to use in the meantime.
I believe that the regulation in the land use bylaw, Councillor Morris, is it be a decommission prior to occupancy.
Yeah, so that's gonna be 2 years from now, and maybe we can get the roads just right.
Councillor Jurgensen?
Similar to what's being said around the table, I think it would be good to move forward with this, but also explore with the applicant ways that whether it's a rezoning application brought forth by the municipality in conjunction with the applicant to ensure that more housing is available. I think that's worthwhile to try to figure out what we can do to prevent those kitchens being decommissioned prematurely.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. Councillor Fast?
Yeah, thank you. I'm in favor of this development variance permit. And I think what we're talking about is the applicant is keeping local food being grown on Bowen. It's keeping the local character. It's a better future for the farm with what I think, with what is being proposed here. And the heritage built, or the lovely old buildings are being proposed to be kept instead of demolished at this time anyway. And as I understand it, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And then so I'm concerned here that what we seem to be doing is talking about protecting a kitchen. And I get it, it's about housing, but this is housing that's way down in a farm. Do we really want to increase density there? And I think that a farm is for farming and food growing, and that's what this farm does. And I think I would be happy to make the motion.
Sorry, made and seconded.
Oh, yes, I seconded it.
I'm going to go Councillor Wake, then Councillor Jurgensen for the second round.
To Councillor Fast's suggestion, I'm thinking we do need housing, and they need housing for the farm. So perhaps a rezoning could go through, put a restriction on it that building could only house employees of the farm. And then we kind of solve those issues.
Councillor Jurgensen, then Councillor Morris. And then I'm going to wrap this up as we're into the second round of.
Councillor Wake did touch on the points I was going to make, other than to speak to Councillor Kelly's point. Can we make a recommendation to refer this to the Heritage Commission as a property they might be interested in looking at? At this point, I get we're moving forward with the variance, but we flag this as something they can look at for potential heritage value.
That would be ultimately up to the will of.
Is that a second motion?
Of council. It could be a second motion, but I'm going to look to Councillor Morris
I just wanted to say, let's proceed with issuing the development variance permit so the applicant can get on with.
I'd also like to be cautious of council leading land use that's owned by somebody else. This is the application that the proponent has brought forward, and if they'd like to bring forward another one as well. So I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And was there another motion for a referral as well? Councillor Getty?
I'd like to move that,
Let's go by item, just say the item number.
Sorry?
Can that be done in another meeting when we can have a written motion presented? There's no need to deal with it tonight.
Okay. Great. Moving on to item 8.3, introduction to development variance permit 2022-0282. This is 1104 and 1108 Foxglove Lane. I'll hand it over to Planner Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard. So I have just a brief presentation to give some background on this variance permit application. The lots are located in Foxglove Lane, which is located along Miller Road. Sort of within the Snug Cove, opposite from Crippen Park and just past the fire hall into Snug Cove. So we received this application in September of 2022. It's gone through internal review and amendments from the original application. We sent notice to neighbors within 100 meters in April before we were introduced tonight. And the recommendation tonight is for consideration at the June 12th meeting. Just by way of background and different from many variances, there is a couple OCP policies that we flagged in the report that are regarding the village residential zone where this is, and specifically townhouses within that village residential designation, with a number of criteria to be used. So satisfying the scale and character of the development, blending with surrounding natural environment, the site can be adequately serviced with Cove Bay water and Snug Cove sewer or other suitable treatment systems to the satisfaction of the applicable approval authorities, and impacts on adjacent properties pertaining to traffic, privacy, screening, and views can be adequately managed. And then policy 167, proposed development must be consistent with the scale and diversity of a village. Townhouses should be designed to minimize detrimental effects on adjacent single detached homes. And this property is also within a development permit area for form and character in the village periphery. And so prior to a building permit being issued, they would have to submit a development permit application that would consider the form and character of the building that would be considered by the advisory design panel. In terms of the application itself, so this zone has a number of regulations and the applicant has asked for changes to some of them. So the zone has a front yard setback of 3 meters and the application seeks to reduce that to 2.1 meters. The zone also has a front yard setback for carports that is 0.3 and that's not changed. The building height, the zoning has a requirement of either 11 meters or 3 stories in height. And the application is for a building 10.9 meters high and 4 stories. So the variance would seek to increase the number of stories, but no increase in the overall building height. And the zoning has a maximum FSR, which is floor space ratio of 0.85. And that's essentially a ratio of the floor area within a building as a relation to the overall property size. So a FSR of 1.0 means a 1-story building completely fills the lot, or a 2-story building fills half the lot. Either way, it's a FSR of 1.0. The zone permits an FSR of 0.85. And so the proposed development on this lot, or these 2 lots combined, could be permitted up to 464 square meters of floor area under the current zoning. And the proposal is to increase that floor area to 1.34. So for a total floor area of 728 square meters. So an additional 263 square meters or 2,800 square feet. And then finally, the zone has a maximum dwelling size of 140 square meters. And the proposal is to increase that to be 182 square meters. So an additional 42 square meters per dwelling, or about 400 square feet. So the initial notice with the application, the applicant provided letters of support from owners of 4 of the lots within the Foxglove Lane subdivision. And those are shown in the ticks with the green that doesn't show up as well on the screen, as I hope. And then since then, subsequently, we've received letters of opposition from 4 other properties. So the Bowen Court, as well as 2 other properties within Foxglove Lane, one of which is a 4-plex, and then 1 owner on Miller who received the notice as well. And so that was the end of my presentation, and the staff recommendation is there as well for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Questions for the planner? Councillor Fast.
Sure, well, I'll lead off. I was a bit confused about the variance in the height. I didn't understand the sketch and the drawings. So I'm wondering if you could, because the sketch that's in here in figure 4 concepts section, come back. Page 194, I think it was. Sorry, I just lost it here.
197, I think.
Well, yes, you're right, thank you. It's different from the one that we received with the letter from Bowen Court, and I'm wondering about figure 4, 197, page 197. If you could, it says 42 meters there at the ridge, and how does that fit with the 10.9 that's in the report? I'm confused.
Sorry, so this figure 4 concept section?
Yeah.
Right. So this proposed height would go from an average grade shown here to a midpoint of the ridge here. So showing on the side, approximate building height 10.9 meters.
Oh, I see, the sideways one there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not actually the ridge, so it's,
So how we measure, building height, maybe an overview, because you can see on this drawing too, they've shown average grade here, sort of halfway through the ground floor.
Yeah.
I'll try to bring this in. So essentially, measuring the height of a building, you measure from, the grade of the building to the top of the building, both of which are more complicated to calculate than you would think instinctively. But so the grade of the building it used to take the corners of the building, and now it takes essentially the average elevation of each line segment around a building as a ratio of the entire building. But in essence, what you can think about for this case is the front of the building is lower, the site comes up in a step, and the top of the building is higher, so it's higher. So the average grade of the building ends up being roughly in the midpoint. And so you can see it shown in the drawing here, the grade of the building, where the building starts to be counted from, is about halfway up that first story. And then to the height of the building, we measure for a peaked roof, we measure essentially the midpoint between the ceiling of the top floor and the ridge. So anytime a building height, the height of the building is measured, it's not actually very peak of the roof.
thank you. And then I have another question. Okay, thanks. That helps because I was unsure about why no variance in height. It looked different. And and I followed all of this. My main concern is that Vancouver Coastal Health is pretty strong about, they don't recommend that we approve this. It's attachment 1, and it reads, Vancouver Coastal Health that council not permit the application due to the following reasons. And they have 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons, and which involve a bunch of things that Bowen Island Municipality can do, but we're not ready to do maintenance bylaws for septic systems yet. And I wonder, I was pretty concerned with the parts about it that they don't recommend it. They have the concerns about contamination and smell, and they're worried about, I'm worried about the neighbors, including Snug Cove House that would be there, and as well as the existing neighbors. And the hydrology report isn't there. With climate change, will that change what the septic system would be able to do or how it would function? The specialized septic system that Vancouver Coastal Health hasn't seen. And if Vancouver Coastal Health says we should not permit it, then I don't think we should. And that's their advice. They're in charge of pollution. It seems to me sewage needs to be treated carefully. That's partly why we're having this Snug Cove sewer problems we're having, is because that wasn't working. And I just don't see why we should trade one problem for potentially another and go against Vancouver Coastal Health. I have one other question, and that relates to, does Vancouver Coastal Health get involved again later in an occupancy permit or something? Because I remember sometimes we've approved some things and then it turns out later Vancouver Coastal Health didn't permit it, the floating buildings.
Vancouver Coastal Health through the chair is approved at the building permit stage. So to receive a building permit that's on septic, you need to engage a registered on-site wastewater practitioner, who files the plan with Coastal Health. Coastal Health certifies that the plan meets their standards. And so where the difference comes is that Coastal Health has standards for subdivision that are stricter than standards that can be applied at a building permit stage. So for example, typically or frequently on Bowen, septic fields are designed using what's called a type 2 or type 3 system. And Vancouver Coastal Health in their subdivision standards specifies that there's space for a type 1 field, which is essentially it's a more spread out system, uses more space. And they require space for a type 1 system and a reserve field. So that, the lifespan of a type 1 system can take place on that site. When the system is end of life, you can build a new field without having the site dedicated already for that.
Okay. And then, I don't think that puts my mind at ease, but anyway, I have one more question is, in the 100 meters that this notice, if we put it up, would Metro Vancouver Parks be notified because they have a salmon run and the park is right across? So I'm wondering if they would be included in the referral.
Through the chair, yes, they received the initial notice and they're within the 100 meters.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jurgensen?
Is there any possibility of the applicant working with Snug Cove House to use on a shared septic arrangement for their offsite septic? If both parties were amenable, of course.
Through the chair, so at an earlier council meeting, council did direct, and forgive me, I don't know the exact wording, but direct staff to work with Snug Cove House on designing a septic field on the adjacent municipal land.
Yes.
And there was a similar motion for the potential for neighboring properties to utilize that. Is there technical, potentially, I guess it's technically possible or feasible. I'm not sure from the design from Snug Cove House's septic requirements for their 20-something units. See their sort of initial plans. I don't know how much space would be left to handle additional load.
Councilor Morris?
So with respect to the septic, that would have to be approved by Vancouver Coastal Health before they got the building permit, if I heard you correctly?
Yes, they would have to approve the system, yes.
Before they got the.
Yes, based on that it met, that like it's designed to their specifications, but not that it meets their subdivision servicing standards. So they have subdivision standards that exceed what they would accept at building permit stage.
Okay, so, but the applicant can't go and build a house and then find out that he can't hook up with the septic and start living in it.
Correct. They would need to have received the the receipt from Coastal Health as part of the building permit process before we would issue a building.
So they can't start building until they get the building permit, and they can't get a building permit until they've got approval from Vancouver Coastal Health for the septic, which is normally just a rubber stamp of the engineer's work, but in this case it might not be.
I can't speak to their end, but no building permit would be issued until they received that.
And I'm trying to find the letter that we got, read the DVP, which had pictures of the height, and I can't find it. I think it was.
I've got it.
In the on-table package.
I know, but I want to look at the picture.
It's the last linked letter in the agenda dated May 5th. That's the one I was going to ask a question about.
Okay, so I've got to find out. It's in the on-table.
Is it this one here? I just put it on screen.
No, that's not the one I'm talking about.
No, it had a picture.
Yeah, there you
That
go.
one, the photo?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that hatched line across the top. There's sort of a line underneath, you know, so that's just showing roughly where the building would actually sit. Or can you tell?
Correct. I mean, that's what, the Bowen Court residents have designed. I mean, I can tell from the applicant's drawings, the ridge height of their proposed building sits about between 1.2 and 1.5 meters higher than the neighbors.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's not violation of the height bylaw because of the drawing. And had they built on the flat, it would, if it was a flat lot, it would have been a very different situation, but it's a sloped lot. Okay, just wanted, and then they've submitted some sort of a suggested change or something?
I think they were talking about the way the ridge.
Well, I thought the ridge wasn't all the way across the building, but it's looking. So the ridge isn't supposed to go all the way across the building, right? It's only in the middle?
the house as proposed at this point does extend across the building.
So it's at 90 degrees to the other houses adjacent.
Oh, okay, so we don't have a, all right.
That last.
This way, there's other ones are this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, to our CAO.
Yeah, that last image that was up does show the, estimated length of the ridge line, and the ridge line is perpendicular to Bowen Court. And so the ridge line is parallel to Fox Club length and the full length of the building.
It runs the same direction as Miller Road does.
Yes.
The ridge line.
Yes.
So it's basically totally in front of the
Yes.
whole of Snucker. Okay.
Yes. And that image was an estimate. I don't know how precise that was, but
Yeah.
estimating the actual height of that.
Okay, but the height is not a variance needed or required. The only variance that's needed or required is for the FSR. But if they didn't get the FSR, they wouldn't need that dormer.
Through the chair, FSR and setbacks and dwelling size.
3 variances.
Height is not
one of them,
but the dwelling size.
Which is FSR.
Nope.
We're getting a little squirrely here, so I'm gonna rein us in.
I'm sure you knew John had said that.
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay, so we can come back once some thoughts are consolidated. So I'm gonna go to Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, my only question was about that image, and I was wondering if Mr. Martin had had an opportunity to look at that, and that was done, obviously by one of the people by an interested party here. And what that really looks like to me is somebody put the green monster from Fenway Park in my front yard, if I was living there. And is this an accurate reflection, that image that we saw can Mr. Martin tell us, is that an accurate reflection of what this might look like if there was a building there, or the proposed building?
Through the chair, I mean, I could say it looks like the width of it is accurate, and I would probably have to look at it more closely in terms of the height.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Wake?
This is a really tough one because I understand and I sympathize with the applicant because of the position they've been put in. But to remedy it, they've gone quite a ways over the line in terms of just the volume and density that they're proposing. And that means, again, an increased load on a septic field that may be questionable, may not be adequate. So I'm feeling like as hard as it is, I think we should be the applicant should be asked to bring back a more modest design, which would allow more room for a septic field. And it would be a more resilient and acceptable one. Is that, am I on the right track?
Through the chair, I guess I would just ask council then to distinguish between if it's rejecting a variance application or if it's referring a variance application back to staff to, request the applicant to revise their application. There's a distinction there.
I think it's just a rejection and it's up to them.
We'd have to, whoa, hang on. Okay, so we've got Councillor Saunders, Councillor Morse, and then anyone else wants to get on there? Saunders, Morse, Getty, in that order. Saunders?
Thank you.
Councillor?
I yes, Leonard. I would, in my mind, I don't think we need to reject it just yet. Simply because they did offer an alternative, or I did see, and Councillor Morse commented on this, is there was an alternative design proposed. I saw that at some point in there that might be more amenable. So rather than reject the whole thing out of hand, I'd like to maybe refer it back to consider that alternative. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Morse?
Well, that was basically, they're in this predicament not because of their doing. And being able to build, and I would like to try and give them as much latitude as possible to come up with something. I can understand all the neighbors' concerns. I still don't quite understand the house size versus FSR. But I would just like to refer it back to them to see if it can be refined to something that is a little more acceptable, and maybe a little further down the road with the application for the permit for Vancouver Coastal Health. I don't know how the chicken and egg part works. If they can't submit their building permit, they've submitted their building permit application, correct? No, okay. So they can't submit that until they get the DVP.
Through the chair, they can submit. We wouldn't process it if we know that it requires a variance.
Okay, all right. So they can't then submit anything to Vancouver Coastal Health for approval prior to submitting?
Through the chair, I imagine they could.
Yeah. At this point, everything with Vancouver Coastal Health has been from us to Vancouver Coastal Health, not between the applicant and Vancouver Coastal Health or their engineer.
Through the chair, to the extent that I shared with Coastal Health the applicant's engineer's response and received a response from Coastal Health, but they didn't directly engage in it.
Yeah. So that could possibly happen. So I would support sending it back for alternatives. I don't want to reject it, because if they can find something, then they've got to wait months to come back again. This way, we're not killing it for them.
Councillor Getty?
I wasn't on council the last time when this came up, but my recollection is that there was a great deal of discussion about trying to maximize density and to give as many, because it's a fundraising idea for Snug Cove House, it was to try and have as many lots and to have as much density. And that my impression was that council at the time was trying to be as generous as they possibly could in terms of it's close to the cove and it wouldn't necessarily require cars, and that it's a good location to have increased density. So my understanding and my recollection was that this is the original current regulations were pretty maxed out. Yes, there's a problem that's come up in terms of sewage and the requirement for septic. And whether or not they've got the capacity with the engineering tanks that they're going to be considering. But this is asking for 182.09 square meters, which is an additional 42 square meters per dwelling You know, it's one thing to get a fourplex. It's another thing to have I think it's a considerable increase over what exists, which was, I think, very generous for the kinds of density that Bowen is used to, even in that location. So I don't know what the trade-offs were at the original. We've also got Snug Cove House that's wanting to build a big building at the end of that, and all those other little lots that are going to be filled in. So if this is bigger than normal or bigger than all the others, then I think we're to increase at this point for any of these lots, I think, and to expand on what was already a very generous allotment, I think is a problem. So we can, recommend that this go to the community to see what they're going to be putting them on notice, but I wouldn't be in favor of supporting this development proposal.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. From the chair, the challenges I have with this application is that, as per the report, I think on page 272, where it outlines the OCP policies, which are really clear. So policy 160, that the municipality will consider applications for townhouses in the village residential designation, provided the following three criteria are satisfied. The first one is that the scale and character of the development can blend in with the surrounding natural environment. And it appears that this is a development that's bigger and higher than anything else, and also has significant additional coverage. I'm not sure if that condition's met. The second is that the site can adequately be serviced by Cove Bay Water and Snug Cove Sewer or other suitable treatment systems to the satisfaction of the applicable approval authorities. And VCH has come out strongly against this as well. We don't have a hydrogeological report, and some of the concerns are outlined in the planner's report. And the third one is impacts on adjacent properties pertaining to traffic, privacy, screening, and views can be adequately managed. And from what I see, and unless I'm corrected, it appears that it's 4 or 5 feet higher, a ridgeline that's directly across the siting of Bowen Court. And I note that in the letters that were against, there was 1 X on Bowen Court, but those are 16 separate co-op residences, larger from 18, that signed that letter would have those X's there. So I'm really challenged by the contravention of the OCP. In addition to policy 167, that must be consistent with the scale and diversity of a village, so the scale seems large. So, but at the same time, understanding that this is partly a problem that we got ourselves into because of the Snug Cove sewer system. So, I can understand and I have empathy for the proponent who's just trying to get value out of their land, but we're really doing it at the expense of gutting the developed OCP, which, not only gutting the developed OCP, but essentially adding insult to a community of seniors that lives right above them. So at this point, I would lean not towards approving this at this point. And if it did need more consideration, I think, the appropriate body to take a look at this would maybe be the Advisory Planning Commission. I might not even, just even looking at the notion of issuing notice, I would probably refer it to the Advisory Planning Commission before notice even goes out, if at all, if this is something that we want to do at all. So fast.
To move things along, I'm going to move alternative number 1, which is on page 202, that council not issue DVP 2022-0282. I move that.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this? Councillor Saunders?
Yeah, I'm not going to support that motion simply because I'd like to give them more time to try and work this out. I'm not in favor of approving the DVP as it stands right now, but there is an opportunity for them to possibly try and work it out.
I'm not going to vote in favor for exactly the same reasons. I don't think it's fair to the applicant.
Councilor Wake?
Can we, I like the idea of referring it to the Advisory Planning Commission, and perhaps with a question about density and a possible alternative. I can't find where the alternative smaller version is in here. But that to me is the direction we want to go. And whatever the mechanism is, so that they have the chance to bring this back as soon as they can.
Just a question to staff perhaps is, so given that there are other alternatives presented in the application, if it's rejected, would the proponent need to, could they just look at one of the other alternatives, or would they need to reapply and submit a whole
6 months from now.
other fee?
To the chair, they would need to resubmit. There's a 6-month waiting period, or they could petition council to waive waiting period, which takes, I believe, a 2/3 majority of council to waive that 6-month period.
Okay, or alternatively, if it is sent back to staff to work with the proponent, they could still be within the existing process, but submit a design that is more in line with OCP and the character of that neighborhood?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, for that reason, just for the sake of, not really cutting the legs out of the applicant, who's clearly trying to do some work to make get some value out of their property in a difficult situation, I would not support this motion, but I would support referring it back to staff to work with the proponent for a more OCP aligned proposal. Councilor Morse?
I was wondering if, we've got to either have the existing motion withdrawn or defeat it, but I think maybe a combination of referring it to the APC and staff. So that.
I don't think, the motion doesn't need to be withdrawn. We could just have a motion to refer. Oh, no, it would be, because the motion's.
Yeah.
So I'll move, we withdraw the motion.
Okay, seconder, second by Councilor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of withdrawing? Carries unanimously. I'll look to Councilor Morris for an alternate motion.
I just would move very simply that council refer DBP 2022-0282 to the Advisory Planning Commission and staff for further information.
You don't want to do the full APC one that's there at the bottom of the page?
Because I think the applicants probably heard the message that they're going to have to amend the application. But maybe the APC can help them think of something to do.
Just through the chair, I was going to recommend that it's not in my report, but it could also be referred to the advisory design panel, who would be reviewing the development permit and may have insight about the design of the building or
that might be good.
Overall massing.
I think probably both. I mean, APC has.
So the council, okay, so then the motion would be that council refer DBP 2022-0282 to the Advisory Planning Commission, the Advisory Design Panel, and staff for further review.
We'll go for our recommendation.
So further information and or recommendation.
I just don't, I mean, I think with the ADP, it's going to be, maybe they'll work with them a bit to try and help come up with something. Applicant might proceed with getting more detailed work involvement with Vancouver Coastal Health. So that's why I was trying to leave it broad.
Okay. So you prefer and staff for further information and review?
Sure.
Can I ask?
But hang on, I'm just gonna have the corporate officer read back the motion as stated so that everybody's clear as to what it is.
Okay, because I'd like the hydrogeological report too, but I can do that as a separate.
So Councillor Morris has moved that council refer DVP 2022-02A2 to the Advisory Planning Commission, the Advisory Design Panel, and staff for further information and review.
So moved by Councillor Morris. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Jurgensen. Any discussion on this? Councillor Fast?
Just that I would be very interested in seeing the hydrogeological report, so I'm not hearing it in this motion. I can see if it comes forward, I guess. Do we want to? Well, okay, I guess they should, I'm just still looking at this Vancouver Coastal Health one and going, they're concerned, and they're talking about a serious health risk and this kind of thing, so I'm wondering, hydrogeological, this is number 4, hydrogeological assessment has not been completed. It's a recommended requirement to be completed by a geoscientist, so I can move that as a separate motion after this then.
Right now, we're just in the referral.
Did we want to, does it say review or recommendations at the end?
I said information and review. Guessing we're going to get a whole new package.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Thank you, Rose.
Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously.
With respect to Councillor Fast's, because Vancouver Coastal Health, it sounds to me from what you were reading that Vancouver Coastal Health is going to require them to do a hydrological review.
It looks like that way to me too, but they didn't say that here. They just said that they recommend that council not permit it. Perhaps their planner has a better idea.
Through the chair, just to say that we did include the requirement for hydrogeological assessment as a condition in the variance permit itself to be
Oh, that's
provided
right.
before the.
Right. Okay, so if they're going full, they know that they're gonna have to produce it. Never mind, then I'm gonna leave that aside and I'm done with this one.
Okay, great. If you're done, we're done.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, if it goes back, I mean, what I think what they need to do here is reduce the size and load the septic field. And then it'll be a new design, that there'll be more room for a new design of septic field. So we're looking for a package that's gonna, where this one wouldn't work for us, will work for us. Is my understanding of what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. 8.4 CAO update. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things that I just want to bring to your attention. Trying to remember exactly when it was. A while back, there was a meeting with the RCMP E division for all CAOs and in the region that the E division covers, which is a large geographic area from Pemberton to the Fraser Valley and includes Bowen Island. And was the first meeting that they had of that nature since 2021. And so it was really mostly updates from the RCMP about services that they deliver. And there was actually quite a lot of discussion about retroactive pay that was required to be paid out on behalf of members that had not had upgrades to their collective agreement for, I think it was 3 years, quite a long period of time. But there was also discussion about a new policy that's emerging for body-worn cameras by all RCMP members in the division, if not the province, and that may be rolling out in the near future. Quite a bit of discussion about next generation 911, or some people call it E911. And really it's a new model of delivering 911 services and enhancing the technology behind it to better support the advent of cellular phones and mobile devices, and it essentially gives first responders much better location accuracy and the ability for real-time texting. So, when you're texting somebody and you can see that they're texting you, but you don't see the message until they hit send. For 911 emergency texting, you'll actually see each character that gets typed in, those types of things. But the big challenge around this new technology and rolling it out is the cost. And so, most municipalities are advocating for those costs to be shifted to cell phone packages, and so for it to be shifted onto local governments themselves. Currently, the province has provided a $90 million grant to assist with the rollout of the technology, but it's not clear about how the costs will be supported ongoing. Currently, there's no legislative authority for the cell providers to actually put that charge on their phones, and so it's a provincial amendment that would be required to support that. And then there was quite a bit of discussion about highway patrol and the integrated homicide investigation team, which thankfully does not have a lot of impact here on Bowen. But one of the biggest rationales for this meeting is it's a precursor to the mayor's meeting with the E Division representatives at their headquarters, Green Acres in Surrey, and so the same topics will be raised at that meeting. I did also want to give council just an early notice that the library and the Hearth are working together on developing options for name consideration for the Cultural Corner project, and primarily, it'll be a naming opportunity for the outdoor stand there, or stage. And so that will be coming to council. They're using our naming policy and procedures to come up with options, and that'll be coming to council in the near future. And then lastly, I wanted to just also mention that there's an opportunity to provide feedback and input on the renegotiation of what's now called the Canada Community Building Fund, which was previously called the gas tax. And there's an opportunity for ensuring that the allocation to, BC and other provinces is increased, possibly, but more specifically, Bowen Island may wish to try to advocate for an amendment to the agreement to ensure that member municipalities of our region get a larger portion of the allocation to the region. Currently, our contribution to the region is split up with 95% of the funds going towards TransLink and 5% to member municipalities, with a base floor of $50,000 and then a population allocation. And it might serve Bowen well to partner with some of the smaller communities in the region to try to amend that allocation formula to be able to achieve a greater percentage of that funding. And that's something that we can also be discussing with MP Weiler on Friday's visit too. So, and that's it for my update at this time. Thank you.
Is there an update to Apodaca Park camping?
I can
find anything out?
I can speak to that. So there's a email in the information package from myself to Mayor and Council about the status of the Apodaca Park, which is a provincial marine park on the east side of Bowen Island. And it came as a surprise to staff and many people on Bowen that all of a sudden there are 4 tent pads and a pit toilet at that park, where before there was none. And we were surprised that we had not been informed or engaged by BC Parks or their partners. And so We did get some information from BC Parks about how they got to the place where they currently are today. Basically, the park plan for Apodaca has always considered the notion of camping in that park. However, it was never really formalized. In 2019 and 2020, they were approached by the Sea Kayak Association of BC wanting that park to be upgraded to have better camping facilities as well as to be part of the BC Marine Trail. And so that planning ensued with both the BC Marine Trail Society and Sea Kayak Association of BC. However, they'd never reached out to Bowen until I think it was earlier this year or late last year to confirm a road right-of-way overland access from the end of Channelview Drive, which is near Taylor Road, to be able to access the park by foot if need be, which I believe they did several times this year. They believe that the park size being small and the location being very remote and boat access only park, that they didn't need to inform or engage with any of the neighboring properties or the municipality. They did respond to some of the concerns that raised by our staff about fires and access, and they have confirmed that they believe that the access trail is 100% within the road right of way and that trespass should not be a problem, and that they do not encourage or support land-based access. It is a marine access only park, and that there's no fires permitted in the park. In terms of wildfire response, they essentially referenced all of their other provincial park wildfire response initiatives in terms of the BC Wildfire Service as being the primary response. They did note that the timing of this happening coinciding with the larger regional park initiative was unfortunate, and that they recognize that makes things challenging. But so that's essentially all I have for an update. Oh, actually, sorry, Mayor, just did want to add that technically speaking, the province has no obligation to consult or seek any municipal approval processes. Generally, senior level of governments will consult with local governments and follow their bylaws and permitting processes. However, in this case, it seems BC Parks chose not to do that.
Thank you. Item 10.1, minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting held April 17, 2023. There is a recommendation there. Whereas council referred the Davies Orchard Revitalization Project to the Heritage Committee for recommendation and comments. And whereas the Heritage Commission requires additional information in order to consider the referral, therefore the Heritage Commission recommends the council direct staff to invite Metro Vancouver Parks to a meeting with the commission as soon as possible to discuss the referral, and that the following information regarding the Davies Orchard Revitalization Project be provided: restoration plans, detailed specifications including proposed materials and design drawings, heritage qualifications of professionals doing the restoration work and plan for oversight, and confirmation that the appropriate heritage variances have been considered. Councillor Jurgensen?
So move.
So moved by Councillor Jurgensen, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Councillor Morris?
I guess I don't quite know. They've submitted plans. I don't know whether they've had building permits issued or whatever. I mean, I'm just not sure I can understand the commission wanting to have some comments and some ideas, but to require them, it just seems so more than maybe we've got the right to ask, and therefore it's not a heritage qualifications professionals doing the work and plan for oversight. I mean, that would just come up in the discussion once they're here for the meeting. So that sort of, I'm just concerned about the tone of it and everything. And I don't know what, does the Heritage Commission, they can provide some input into what color it should be, but we don't have the right to actually require to stipulate the color or anything, or the type of finishing or anything like that.
Councilor Getty?
The first recommendation was to refer the revitalization project to the Heritage Commission for recommendations and comment. My understanding is that the material that was provided for the building permits was scant. And there were some questions in terms of the quality of the materials in terms of doors and windows, and that there just wasn't any information that was visible on the plans. And that there's been subsequent issues raised with respect to repairs to the chimneys and what materials are being used they're taking the old bricks apart and they're using a different, anyway, there's questions that are being raised in terms of whether or not that's heritage specification. So I think it would be helpful for Metro or the architect that they've hired, the consultant that they've hired, to talk to the Heritage Commission and find out whether or not there's questions that need to be answered. And we have those cottages on our register. So we have responsibility for making sure that if they are restored, that they're restored to heritage values. And there's questions that have been raised on that.
So having, always liking to see the background legislation, where does it actually say that we are required to make sure that, I guess I'm just not totally understanding. If you're replacing a window and it had mullioned windows before and you're replacing it with a mullioned window now.
It's the difference between wood frame and fiberglass, I believe.
So we're starting to get lost in the weeds. So what we're
I would just be happy to have a motion that they invite me with the commission to discuss the Davies Orchard project, period. And then if it comes out of that, hopefully they would bring drawings and things like that, but just not to be so prescriptive.
Councillor Fast and Councillor Jurgensen.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this recommendation because a building permit application doesn't include always the detailed information that a Heritage Commission wants. And this is a Heritage Commission that Bowen Island Municipality set up in order to preserve the heritage values down there and to make sure that they were protected. And these buildings are listed in the Heritage Registry. And those are careful steps in order to protect some of the things that are special about Snug Cove and about Bowen Island and about Bowen's rural character and obviously our the heritage from this period of the time. And seeing as how Bowen Island Municipality set up this commission and we listed them in the Heritage Registry, I think it would be good to have some heritage information for the commission to look at. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Jurgensen.
I think from having been at the Heritage Commission meeting, it was felt that if these things weren't put into the recommendation, they wouldn't be brought to the meeting. And that would require an additional meeting and to ask them to come back with those. That would further delay the process.
So it's been moved and seconded. It is a recommendation that came from a commission with councillors on it. Just an ask to have somebody from Metro Vancouver there. I'm happy to talk to the staff there as well when I'm at Regional Parks this week. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Raise your hand, say nay. Carries unanimously. Item 10.2, minutes of the Housing Advisory Committee meeting held April 17th, 2023. The recommendation that direct staff to explore the feasibility of the Housing Accelerator Fund for Bowen Island. Councillor Jurgensen?
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Jurgensen, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the, although, see, you were itching, to say something.
Okay, well, it's to explore. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously.
Explorer is very carefully chosen.
Item 11.1, update to Council on Metro Vancouver business. A whole bunch of meetings happening this week, so nothing to report now. There is you may have received it by email, but on June 10th, 2023, Metro Vancouver is holding its Council of Councils. All councillors are invited to. It's from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Fort Langley Golf Course. Breakfast served at 8 a.m., which was early ferry that morning. But it is in your
We all got the
You
email.
all got the email. Great. Okay. 11.2, update to Council on TransLink Mayor's Council. It was just a closed meeting that happened last time around. And then I will turn it over to 11.3, Islands Trust, to our Islands trustees.
Sure. I just draw your attention to the information item called 12.3 in our agenda. And this is Chair of the Islands Trust wrote to the province about feedback on their coastal marine strategy intentions paper, which includes information that you might be interested in terms of the province's designing this coastal marine strategy, and it may have things to do that relate to Bowen Island's OCP or plans. And I don't know if this period has closed or not, but I wanted to just let everybody know that this is out there. And it seemed to me that it might be something that council or staff would be interested in. So I would, I'm going to, seeing as it's, I'll just refer it to I'll put it on the information items of the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, because they have made suggestions to council in previous terms about this. Some of the things in this paper, so I'll just refer it. But I wanted to bring it to your attention that that there's this bigger movement by the province is underway.
Thank you.
Okay.
There was a question raised on Facebook recently in terms of, and it got buried and it was brought to my attention asking if the Islands Trust had some sort of final say over any amendments to the OCP. So I wrote a very brief reply to that. And I think what I'll do is write a larger one and have it double checked in terms of making sure that I've got the details correctly, and then I'll publish that. But there's a question that's out there, the community's asking about the role of the executive committee and our OCP amendments, so I'll try and clarify.
Fair enough. Maybe just to tack on, Councillor Getty and I were both at the Rural Islands Economic Partnership event on Gabriola a few weeks ago, where there were a number of islands trustees, but then just a number of interested parties in the islands in general. It was a fantastic couple of days. Definitely felt like our people there. It's an organization that I think is thriving and is definitely one worth participating in as they move forward. So if any other councillors around the table have the opportunity, or any community members out there have the opportunity to attend a Rural Islands Economic Partnership event, I would highly recommend it.
There's a little report from Dawn Schaefer in 1214.
And Bowen Island was very well represented there. Moving on to item 11.4, there's a recommendation to move to a closed council meeting owing to 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. Councillor Getty?
Move the recommendation.
Councillor Getty moves the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Morse. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, carries unanimously. What's that?
Alex stuck it out.
Alex stuck it out. So moving on to
Stamina.
Item 13, question period. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question related to an item discussed at meetings. They must relate to an item on the agenda and be directed at the mayor. Are there any questions from the community or the room this evening?
We have a couple of people online.
No question, did you
I
think?
don't see any hands up online.
Okay. So seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Council Jurgensen, seconded by Council Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Carries unanimously. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
5 minutes.